Hello and welcome to the East Lampeter Township Public Meeting. All participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. This meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the Township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the Township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the Township's website. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the Township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Good. Okay. Good evening, and I'd like to call to order the Monday, September 12th, 2022 meeting of the East Lampeter Township Board of Supervisors. There are agendas at the back of the room. There's also an area for signing in. If you would please do that either on your way in or out for the public record. Joining me in the room this evening is Supervisor Demi, Vice Chair Corey Meyer. On Zoom this evening is Supervisor Roger Root and Supervisor Mike Thornton as well. Roger, you can hear me correct?
Yes.
Mike, you can hear me correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much. I believe you may be getting some additional documents sent to you via email right now from Tara. So make sure you have those for presentation coming up on our pension funds. Okay, if you would please rise and join me in saying the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, item number 3 is public comment. We have public comment at the beginning of our meetings for non-agenda items. So items that are not on this evening's agenda that the public would like to address the Board of Supervisors for. We allow that at the beginning. That way we can get to the other business and you're not having to stick around if you have non-agenda items that you'd like to speak to. So anyone here for public comment? Anyone? Hey, no one coming in online. Great. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move to item number 4, our consent agenda. On our consent agenda, we have 4A, the approval of this evening, September 12th, 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting agenda. 4B, approval of the minutes of the Monday, August 15th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. And 4C, approval to pay invoices from all funds, a total of $551,430.08. There are a few items of note. There's $45,000 to Whitmer Fire Company for the initial contribution to their tanker refurbishing project. There's $65,025 to the Township Fire Companies. Those are 4 fire companies for their third quarter contributions from the taxpayers. That is $16,256.25 to each of our 4 fire companies. And then finally, item of note, $8,678.90 to ARC Document Solutions LLC for document scanning services that we continue to pursue for public documents. Okay, that is it for the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
In this motion, is there a second?
Second.
A motion has been made by Corey, seconded by Ethan. Okay, Roger.
Agreed.
Mike.
Aye.
Ethan.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Chair says aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 5, we have a presentation in reference to our pension plans investment performance from Morgan Stanley. Steve and Howard, step up. Steve, you may have to actually take that off of there and talk right into it so that the members on Zoom can hear you, Steve. Thank you.
I'm Steve Kepchar, and I'm here tonight with Howard Willard.
You're on.
And we want to say thank you very much for East Lampeter allowing us to manage the money here over the years. And one thing I can say, the first word is volatility. The market continues to climb a wall of worry, whether it be the Ukraine, whether it be inflation, whether it be interest rates, oil prices. The corporate earnings have been coming in quite nicely. And what Howard is handing out and we'll be talking and discussing is our performance, how we've done, what we've looked at in terms of the allocation, and to see how we're doing as far as your actuarial goals. And I think we'll give a report that is decent, and it's not going to be a glamorous one this time, but I think we'll see the information that comes. So Howard, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. Well, I'm sure as many of you know, it's been an unbelievably tough year in the market. And not just the equity markets. Really, the biggest issue has been fixed income on a risk adjusted basis. You know, your bond normally stocks go down, bonds go up. But when the pain starts on the interest rate side, from the Fed hiking rates to slow inflation, you know, bonds are a seesaw. When rates go up, prices go down. And we'll take a look in here. But there are parts of the bond market that are actually worse than most of the stock market. So that being said, let's look at page 5 of 52. And as of, this is through the end of August, some of the alts haven't been fully reconciled through the end of August, but for the most part, this is going to be your most up-to-date number. Down 15.6 year to date on a dollar weighted return. And this is, you know, we did come in and reduce equity exposure at the beginning of the year from a rebalance, but there has been pretty much no safe place to hide all year. It, I think, is good to keep in mind what happened 19, 20, and 21, you know, solid double-digit returns. And I don't think that's out of the question going forward, but we are going to have these growing pains. And like I said, on the next page, you will see the asset allocation. We're right at the neutral asset allocation, which is 60% equities and fixed income, you know, right around 25%, alternatives, 13, cash at 2. And that is where we are very comfortable right now. We expect volatility to continue, and there very well may be in the next 2 to 3 months some buying opportunities where we will rebalance kind of a little bit, you know, 60, 62, 63, something like that equity exposure, but not yet. A potential catalyst might be post midterm elections. That actually tends to be the best period during any 4-year presidential cycle, regardless of who wins the midterms and regardless of who's in the presidential situation. It tends to create gridlock, which is good for markets. So that is a catalyst we see coming up to, you know, maybe add a little bit more to equities. Page 7 of 52. This is, I think, one thing to look at year to date. So down 15.2 gross. The MSCI All World, that's like the S&P 500 for the entire globe, down about 18%. Intermediate bonds down 7. The BC long-term down 22.3. So if you're on that seesaw in fixed income and you're way out on that seesaw, it's been a very tough year. So I think one thing that we'll see is we're glad that, you know, from one of our earliest meetings coming out here, adding to alternatives, that helped us. And really, this is one of these things where we just you gotta tread water in this sort of a bear market. We will, you know, we'll get to the other side of this at some point. We'll obviously stay long-term because the liabilities that this pension offsets is, you know, 30, 50, 70 years down the road, depending on the, you know, the age of some of the participants. So this will be a rounding error. Doesn't feel like it today, but it will be 3 years from now, 5 years from now. The one nice thing about the pain that we're having in the fixed income markets is as the market yields more, there's less potential pain and we're getting higher coupons. right? So as our bonds come due, that we're paying 2.5% or potentially paying 5%. We expect, I think the market expects a full 3/4 from the Fed at their next meeting and another hike coming in. It's all going to be inflation dependent, and they've got an impossible job where they got to slow this record inflation and without causing a recession. And whatever your stance on the technical definition of a recession, we've got some indicators say that we're in it now, some indicators that say like we've never had this low of unemployment in a recession. So whatever you want to call it, it's a turbulent economy with some strangely positive things and some strangely, tough things. So it's unique, it's whatever. Let's take a look real quick at 11. And what you'll see here to highlight is the biggest difference here is at the end of 2020, we were at 67% equities. And that benefited us, greatly in 21. And we did dial it back at the beginning of this year. So we rode the positive times, but we're prudent enough to get it back very close to, 60%. And that's where we're comfortable long-term. If we feel, a little more aggressive tactically, that's not where we are right now. But that we have basically 60 plus or minus 10% is the goal there with the equities. And the alternatives, the target is 10. Now the alternatives you see down there, some of those aren't true alternatives. They're like, if you own a real estate company, that's a stock, they'll call it and all, even though it's really, a traded stock. But that being said, let's hop to the page 13. And just one thing to highlight here is the sectors, and nothing major here other than our underweight to tech. Even though it's the biggest sector that we hold less of it than the S&P 500, which that's how we are defensively positioned right now. We're in a wait and see mode. We're our foot off the gas a little bit. So having a little bit less in tech, we think right now is prudent. And at some point, that may change based on the managers that we're utilizing in our conviction with them. Let's hop to, and feel free, you guys have the reports in front of you on Zoom.
Yes.
Let me know if I'm going too fast or if there's something I missed. I'm going to hop ahead a couple pages here and take a look at the managers on 19 and 52. And what you'll notice here is it has been, it's been rough for growth. Both of our growth managers underperforming a little bit year to date. Poland in line since we owned them, but had basically given back. They had been very strong outperformers, but basically have given it back in the last, 12 months, 3 years. Jennison, which is, we cut them to a smaller part of the portfolio when we did a change. They are, when things turn to the positive, they're probably going to be your biggest alpha provider. And they do hold some higher octane things. We believe in them, and as a manager, they're just not in the best sandbox right now. So both of those a little bit tough year to date. Jennison, you've only held since the beginning of 2020, and they had fantastic numbers in 2020, but have obviously given those back a little bit. Large cap value, the Delaware large cap value down 774 year to date versus its peers down 10. Aristotle down 15 versus its peers down about 10. But Aristotle, you'll notice, is up 9 since you own them, and the Russell 1000 value up 7. So Aristotle underperforming a little bit year to date, but very strong long-term numbers with them. And Delaware in line, they're a more conservative manager, so they're doing what they're supposed to do year to date right now. Mid-cap value, the Chartwell mid-cap, pretty close to inline year to date. Great, relatively great last 12 months, only down 3 versus down 8 with its peers. And they're up 8.5 versus 8 since you've owned them. The small cap, the Ziegler small cap core, down 13 last 12 versus 18 last 12 on the Russell 2000, and they're outperforming 7.3 versus 6.4 since inception. And international, as rough as things are here, it's obviously way tougher in anything that's got exposure to Europe, and even in Asia. Harding Loevner underperforming a little bit year to date, but still outperforming since you own them 6 versus 4.6. And then we recently made a change in emerging markets. So you've got, a 2-week track record there with both the BNY Mellon and the GQG partners. And we split that between a growth and a value manager. So the next page actually shows the bond manager, Sage, and they are year to date down 8 versus about 8.5 on the index, and last 5 years up 2 versus 1.2. So it's been a tough year to date. Most of the managers that you own have good long-term track records, great long-term track records, but they basically it's just been a little rough for all of them. The page 23, let's look at something that is, I think, better, and most importantly, kind of an actionable item. We have, we showed up here, I don't know, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, to talk about alternatives. And this is exactly why we own it. Your alternatives account as a whole is down 5 year to date, with almost all of them being up to pretty close to break even. There is one drastic underperformer, which the Skybridge, the multi-asset, they're down 24% year to date. We have already gone in for a redemption. Morgan Stanley about 6 months ago went from watch to sell. And it was mostly because of their change of philosophy and the change of liquidity. They used to have quarterly liquidity and changed it to twice a year with really no good explanation. And our due diligence team said, look, this doesn't make any sense. And went basically to redemption on that. We're going to be getting parts of the portfolio back on that. It'll take a little bit because of their change to every 6 months, but all of the other portfolios, you can see the Ares and the Blackstone year to date up 7 and 11%. The Ironwood multi-strategy down 2.5%. The NB Crossroads 4 down 4%, and the 6 up 4%. So the private equity is the Crossroads, and they're basically at a break even between the two of them. And then the new one, the diversified credit, which was basically a way to get exposure to a fixed income like vehicle. This is private fixed income, and has very low duration risk. So that's in tight on that seesaw. So little risk to the Fed going up. So it was good that we added there kind of when we did. So happy with the account as a whole. We're not going to, obviously shoot the lights out with everything, but this has helped us tread water. And it's a rough market. I put a couple slides in here, but basically our CIO is not convinced that we're completely out of the woods yet. And the curve inverting, basically the 2-year bonds paying more than 10-year bonds, is a indicator that things are going to be bumpy ahead. And basically the key is just don't get out over your skis. We want to stay prudent. We want to stay long term, but we want to be cautious for a little bit here. But one thing I think that's important to remember is, other than that, going to 33 at 52, as glim as things seem, I think it's always good to take a look at, all right, well, what is the long-term data say? And basically over the last 100 years, 73% of calendar years are positive. And most of those are significantly positive. So, we're not going to get it every year. And we don't have to liquidate this entire portfolio tomorrow. And we're still averaging more than 7%, which is, you guys switched to 6.5. You're under.
107.
Yeah.
We pulled it back down.
So we're still there. Obviously, we'd like to do it every year if we could. And we'll get back to doing that hopefully shortly. 34 and 35. 34 was basically just a replay of, hey, this is why we own alts. And obviously the performance numbers this year show that. And we're always looking for upgrades there and new additions in the alternative space. But we continue to see that as where more opportunities are. And, the one nice thing about having a pension plan that has a 50, 70-year time horizon is you don't need liquidity with all of your money in the next 5 years. So, college endowments and things like that, they tend to have 50+% in alternatives and illiquids. So it's that's somewhere where most pension plans go, but it's a thing to consider at least on a go forward basis. And then this last little chart just to show you that, markets rarely finish on the downside. That blue isn't really at the red anywhere. And you can see, 2020 was a very interesting year. We were down 35% at one point and finished up 16. So, that was a lot. Is there any questions?
Howard, I'm assuming you're gonna get to that 62 to 63% in the equities by pulling out of fixed income, by pulling out of that.
Probably, yeah. And that's that may be 2 months from now. It may be 6 months from now, kind of depending the way things unfold. And it may not. It may be 12 months from now. It may not be something that we're necessarily looking for. But at some point, right, we want to be. When things are on sale, that's when you want to be a net buyer. But we're not there yet, I think, is where we are as a firm and as a group.
I hear you leaning a little more heavily towards the alternatives.
I think they're a good place to reduce volatility and keep us in the high single digits, right? Most of the alternatives that we focus on aren't the ones that shoot the lights out. There are some obviously that are there, but the whole idea is to create a portfolio of stuff that zigs and other things zag. So a little bit more stuff there, I think, helps cushion years like this. I mean, we don't want to be chasing that sort of performance, but it's over the next 3 to 5 years, if we went to a target of 20 with a max of 30, I don't think that would be inappropriate. It's not necessarily a recommendation today, but I think that's having a little bit more leeway might make some sense down the road.
And a similar question here, who's getting the 2%? Because we've kept cash pretty much at 2% roughly.
Yeah,
For the period of time.
and a lot of that cash is actually some of the managers hold. So
Okay.
they'll deploy their cash when they see fit. And if they don't, if they're selling things and holding cash and proceeds 5% or something like that, that's, we can't force them to do anything, but if we give them money, it'll probably come from fixed income, but it may come down to, hey, where's the, where are interest rates and where's the environment? It may make sense to, at that point, maybe instead of adding equity risk, we add fixed income risk and go out on duration a little bit because we think the hikes are done. And now all of a sudden we can make 5 or 6% on, intermediate to longer term fixed income.
Our state policy limit 15% on the alternatives. We
have it at some point.
we up at the, do you know?
I think the last policy we have is 15. with a
Yeah, I
target
thought
of
it was
10.
at 10.
10 is the
Yeah.
target with a cap. of
Yeah,
15.
Right.
cap of 15. Okay, that's
target,
what I thought we were doing. So you may come back to us and want to have a discussion that says, how about 20 guys?
It's a maybe.
Okay.
Or maybe it's a target of 15 with a cap of
Cap of
20 or
20.
25. I mean, it's not anything. There's nothing jumping out where it's like, hey, we want to add money to XYZ right now. And it may be more of a 2-3 years down the road on the other side of our next bull market where we're like, hey, right now it's a prudent time to trim equities and instead of going and fixing. But maybe it'll be that there's just so many opportunities in fixed income to save it.
Okay. All right. questions? Roger, Mike? So your first time hearing the presentation, Mike, I think, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. When is the
I
next,
apologize. What'd you say?
when is the next report?
I mean, we do quarterlies with the committee, which is two of the officers, Hutch and Kevin.
Kevin, yeah.
Sorry, I played football with a Kevin Hutchinson, so I always get.
Kevin
I'm
Hutchinson.
like, wait.
There you go.
So,
Is that
yeah.
home play? So, yeah, you won't see them again. You won't come back before the board till beginning of next year.
What in front of? Traditionally, I come back in September, but if we have
Yeah.
if you want us back,
Yeah.
6 months from now, or something like that, we'd be happy to figure something.
We can have that conversation, Mike, if you'd like to at some point. Okay.
Sure,
All right, good.
thank you.
Roger, you had heard the presentation prior term, but any questions, thoughts?
None now.
Great. Right. Anything else? Nothing else? Nothing. Okay.
No, I'm good.
Ethan, good. All right. Thanks, Howard. Appreciate it. I gotta imagine you're finding each day to be a little challenging when you go into the office and think, what the heck is gonna happen
These are
now?
the days when we earn it the most.
But
Right?
you
You
do.
gotta be prepared for bad news.
I bet you
We're
do.
here in the good times.
I bet you do. Do you think there's not only one more coming, but two more coming, huh? Fed rate
Interest rate.
increases.
Yeah, September 21st, 75 points, and then November. We've already said. No. 1.25, yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Wow. Thank you guys very much. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Okay. All right. Moving on in our agenda, under old business. 6A, we have a request for financial security release from Glick Fire, Mill Creek Road. We have the township engineer has provided a letter recommending full release of the financial security for that project. That would put the balance at 0. Anyone here from Glick Fire? None. Okay. Interest, gentlemen.
Make a motion to approve the escrow reduction for full release for Glick Fire.
Second,
Motion by Corey, second by Mike. Questions or concerns? Roger,
Aye.
Mike,
aye.
Ethan,
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6B. A request for financial security reduction, high CGS, 1902 Old Homestead Lane. The township engineer has provided a letter recommending full release of the financial security for the project. Remaining balance is 0. Anyone here from high CGS? One. Okay, is there a motion?
Make a motion to request to approve financial security reduction for high CGS 1902 Old Homestead Lane for full release.
Is there a second? Motion by Corey, second by Ethan. We'll get you, Roger. Questions or concerns? Hearing none. Roger,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ethan,
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Chair says aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6C, request for time extension to record conditionally approved plan, Stoidler's Old Philadelphia Pike. Is there anyone here from Stoidler Properties? Okay, so we've they're looking for how much time here? 90 days. So going out to December 19th. Right. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve a 90-day time extension for Stoidler property.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion by Ethan, second by Roger. Questions or concerns? Hearing none. Roger,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ethan,
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Chair says aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, 7A. Time extension to preserve rights to record for a recorded plan, Hess. 832 Willow Road. Is anyone here? You can approach the board if you'd like to. Hey, wanna come up. Yep, we do have your letter, so you're going to need to speak right into that, unfortunately, for them to hear you. So you can take it off and talk into it too.
Okay,
Go ahead. What would you like the board to know?
sure. So my husband and I wrote this letter. His name is Joe. I'm Angela. Thanks for listening today. We purchased the lot from my father-in-law who had it subdivided. It's currently still owned by my brother and sister-in-law. They own the house on the front half of the lot, and we purchased the rights to the back half of the lot when we were getting married 5 years ago. And so we have been planning to build ever since then. And this year we contacted our builder to start working on the plans about a year ago now. It's a custom home, so it's taken a long time. And we finished kind of where we thought we were going to land around the summer of this year, thinking we had plenty of time by our deadline, our 5-year deadline, which is on November 4th. And just due to the fact that there's been significant inflation this year, as you heard from the gentleman in Stanley, inflation, and also just the cost of interest rates rising and our cost of borrowing going up dramatically. Both of those things meant that we were needing to make some changes to our original plans based on where we thought pricing was gonna land when we talked to our builder, when we initially started the process last year. Costs were just significantly higher than we expected. So we've had to revise our plans, do repricing, and wait for all of that to complete so that we can start the process for obtaining the mortgages and the lending to actually be able to break ground. And so that's why we're looking for this extension. We hope to be able to break ground by November 4th, the sooner the better, but we figured we're about 2 months out and we're not quite there yet. And so better to start the process now of asking for something if it is needed.
Okay, good. Any comments, questions, guys? Roger, Mike? Any questions? You guys saw the letter as well too, so it's a great lot.
Yeah.
Got a great view.
So excited.
Yeah, I can agree. I had to stop to even remember it. It's been 5 years, so
Sure.
just calling attention to the riparian and pedestrian easement down along
Yeah.
the creek there. So just we'd like to try to get those if we can. So
Yep.
all right. All right, that's probably it right now. Angela, that's probably we have from you. Okay, let us talk about it and we'll see where we can go. Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Appreciate that. Yeah. Gentlemen, you saw the letter from Joe and Angela Hess. They're pushing up against their 5-year timeline. So your thoughts?
Make a motion. Motion to approve a 6-month extension to obtain the building permit for the 832 Willow Road Hess property.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Second? Seconded by Corey. So a motion by Mike, second by Corey. Questions or concerns? Hearing none. Roger?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Ethan?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good luck with your project. Okay, very similar. 7B, time extension to preserve the rights to the recorded plan, Smoketown Airport Road. Thanks, guys. You're gonna need to grab that and talk into it, somewhere they can hear. So thank you.
Hi, Kevin Zortman, Marlon Horst from Smoketown Airport. And the Horsts have a recorded plan for hangar construction and some hangar expansion there. And we're running up against the end of our plan also. And just getting to the point at the airport with the family coming together, some businesses that are expanding there. Honestly, figuring out who needs what area when and how much space. So we just haven't gotten to the point of knowing that yet. So rather than let the plan expire and start all over again, we thought, well, we'll come in, see if we can get the plan extended. And that would also give the family and the businesses on the airstrip time to see who's going to land where with what space it needs.
Was that a pun?
No, but it was pretty good, wasn't it?
Thanks.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Kevin. We got your letter, so thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Roger, Mike, you guys have the letter as well. You're looking for a 5-year, and according to the letter.
Right.
Okay. The obviously, the board's responsible for balancing current interests against future challenges, requirements, issues, regulations, our subdivision land development, stormwater zoning, all those things are continually being looked at. So I would probably say 5 years would be too much for me, for my tastes. Just knowing that puts us 10 years out from when it was first put out there, and that a lot changes in that time. But I'll let the board discuss it. Thoughts, guys?
I have a question for staff. Can you have a second extension? So say we approved X number of years, we can do another extension.
Absolutely. If the board wants to do multiple extensions, that's absolutely, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, things are changing quick. You know, less time, maybe 2 years would be, would feel great for me.
Thoughts, Ethan, Roger, Mike?
I just had a question. Certainly, it's the airport management that needs to make the decision, I guess, on the timelines. And gentleman mentioned other businesses. Can he elaborate on that?
Well, Kendall Horst, one of the family members and owners of the airport, has a business in the airstrip fixing and renovating planes. And he's the business owner who currently is in need of space and trying to figure how much space, what the future business is going to bring, how much space he's going to need, where in this new plan can we get that space.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Roger, questions?
No questions.
Ethan, what are you gonna-
Question would be, so I mean, the big changes that could potentially happen in the next 5 years are, I mean, what staff put in here, saldo changes, zoning potential changes, and stormwater. Not seeing big zoning changes necessarily. How close does this property go up against our new park now across the road? Does it extend across the road, or is it in the floodplain at all?
No, I don't believe it extends across Mill Creek at all.
So no potential. So stormwater is the one potential change. That'll be a response to the state issuing their new guidelines, which we don't have yet. Might be a question for staff. What currently in the saldo that we're prepping would potentially impact this plan?
I don't think there's any changes in the saldo at this moment, the way it stands, that would impact the plan.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I know staff had said they're not comfortable with 5 years because of potential changes to stormwater, saldo, and zoning. I just haven't seen anything come through, even a discussion on any of those three that are in our near term, even 2-year viewpoint. And it takes a little while to update our saldo. So unless there's something that's coming, I don't see any reason. It's an airport. It's probably going to keep being an airport for a while.
That's the benefit, no intention of signing or changing.
Right. The MPC provides 5 years of protection for every plan once it's recorded. And yeah, I was just trying to convey that, those are the ordinances that if they change, they can have an impact on these plans. I think Ethan's right. Probably the one that would be most likely in the near term would be stormwater.
That wouldn't impact any of our projects that we'd be doing. It'd be more of an extra imposition on the property owner based off of their impervious coverage.
Correct.
Right. DEP could change the requirements that we need to have in our ordinance that would apply to new plans.
There would be nothing preventing you from coming back, Kevin.
Right.
The horse could come back, obviously, in 2 years and say, hey, it's a,
Where we at now?
exactly where we at. Yeah, exactly. I think there are, as Ethan is pointing out, maybe a couple of areas that are potential in the next 2 to 5 years. Stormwater, maybe our saldo, likely in the next 2 years, probably not, that would affect this. But I would say but let's see what the board has to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Good.
We were glad we caught it before she expired.
Yeah,
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 definitely.
yeah. Good for you guys. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Okay, board. So, we had some discussion, we've had, staff weigh in on sort of what the MPC requires and, landholder has given us a bit of an idea about perhaps some internal discussions and planning that's going on for some businesses associated with the parcel. We do have the opportunity to perhaps hear a petition again from the property owner in the next couple of years, 3 to 5 years or so. So we could extend it again, but your thoughts?
Ethan makes great points. I mean, I'd be okay with 2 or 3 years. I don't think 5 years is quite necessary at this point. Again, applicant could request an additional extension. So.
Is that a motion?
No, I think conversation is still good.
I'm fine going all 5 years, but if other people want to do shorter and they can come back again, I'd go for that too.
Roger, Mike?
No, I think we covered the good points about it. Seems as though since they can come back, a 2-year extension is maybe sufficient now. Gives a little more incentive to keep things moving.
Roger, thoughts? Anything else?
Agreed. 2 to 3 years.
Okay. All right, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to extend time extension, preserve rights to record plan for 2 years for the Smoketown Airport Road plan.
Okay, motion by Corey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Roger. Okay, questions or concerns? Hearing none. Roger?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Ethan?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. We have 7C, Hartman Station, Phase 3. This is in reference to the stormwater rock bins installations. There's been a question come up from the developer of Hartman Station, Phase 1, 2, and 3. I'm assuming all 3. They'd approached staff, wanting to discuss potential of release of financial security that's tied to that development. And I guess staff's research has shown that perhaps maybe there are stormwater facilities that we don't know if they've been put in by the builders who built on these lots. We're just not sure. So we're trying to have that conversation. So introduce yourselves if you would, please.
Well, thank you, John. Todd Stump here with Gerald Graham. We represent GNS Associates here tonight. We were builder developers in Hartman Station in Phase 3. It was mostly, I guess we'd be developers. I built one house there, and Gerald,
I believe I had 2 in that Phase 3.
Okay.
So most of the lots we were sold to garment builders, and we just wanted to come in tonight to talk to you guys about one of the outstanding items on our things that need to be done for the release of financial security. Thanks to you gentlemen for being here to see us. Thanks for much, Roger, joining on Zoom. Hutch, thanks for getting us on the agenda. I know it was late in the week. I contacted you, but thank you. I guess as I thought today what I was going to say here tonight, and it all seemed pretty simple from a basis. This development started in 2005, and obviously we're in 2022 right now, and the world of stormwater is much different now. We've got obviously like rain gardens. Township has a stormwater authority, the main point I maintain is that when these were rock bins were put in, if there's question now on either the township engineer's point of view or township staff's point of view, I feel, and I'll let Jared talk Gerald talking a little bit, but there should have been inspections done at the time when the rock bins were put in, because once something's underground, it's underground. I strongly feel that, again, we're in a different world in 2005, 6, 7, 8, and 9 than we're now. And, if the township wanted to know that these rock bins were done right, that was the time to inspect it and tie it into a building permit and ultimately, the occupancy permit. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Todd's saying. We, in good faith, did what was required, but there was not any inspection process required by the township at that time. So it seemed a little redundant to come back now and request some proof that they're all put in when there wasn't any proof required during the construction process. So it seems to be a kind of a retroactive thing that kind of has both of us in a bind right now.
So staff, do I hear from the applicant or the petitioners that in 05, when the plan was laid out for the subdivision, there was not a process in place that would require them or the builders to adhere to the provision of these rock bins and then prove that they were there?
I disagree with that statement. All the required public facilities on any land development plan for which developers have to post financial security are required. So of course, that goes along with some process to assure the township that they've actually been constructed. So, the roads are inspected, sanitary sewer, when it goes in, it's inspected, the water facilities are inspected, all those curbs, stormwater in the road is all inspected. Those are all required public improvements. Just like, in parallel, not at the same time, but in parallel, when you're building the house, footers inspected and foundations inspected and framings inspected and so on. And so somebody has to call the township or the engineer and say, hey, it's ready for inspection.
I disagree with you there, Hutch. Obviously, sewer, underground, Slave here comes out to inspect that. Water is underground. The city of Lancaster would come out to inspect that, Hutch. I mean, I have the original plan that does it does say how they should be put in, and they've all been put into that, those specs, to my knowledge. And Gerald's been around longer than I have. When you build a house, and obviously these rock bins are part of the house because the stormwater goes in there and the excavating is all done at that time. You have a list of inspections to do, and you call for those inspections that are asked for by the township on the permit, Hutch. If there's no inspection asked for, and there's none on the plan that asked for it, are we supposed to know that the township inspection when they didn't ask for one for this particular thing? I'm sorry, the look how.
So once again, let me ask the same question. In 2005, were we not setting the expectation with the building community that this infrastructure requirement that was on the plan, that it had to be inspected and or they had to provide evidence that it was done? The applicant is saying no.
By far, no. I mean, I'd be happy to see a building, and if it was required, then, and it was required, John, and it wasn't done, then a certificate of occupancy should not have been issued, because if you don't follow all the inspections on that inspection list, then you don't get your certificate of occupancy.
Well, again, building permits for the dwelling itself is a separate issue from the land development requirements. The inspector of the house, the home that's being built, isn't somebody that looks at roads, sanitary sewer, anything outside of the house itself. To expect that inspector is going to be looking at those things is just wrong.
But Hutch, a building permit does require that I believe it's, Larry or East Lampeter Sewer Authority member come out and inspect the sewer line as it comes in. Why couldn't it have been listed that whoever inspects this also? That's where I'm lost at in all this.
So who's the one who's supposed to inspect this?
Well, typically it'd be the township engineer that would inspect all the public improvements. Or
And is that
gather information from the appropriate authorities.
And are there a lot of improvements that they regularly inspect that we don't, is that listed anywhere, which things need to be inspected? I know when I get a building permit, it says you need to stop work, call, get an inspection before you proceed. It's very clear when I pull a building permit, here's when you call for an inspection. I haven't done a stormwater one. I know we've had multiple other issues with developments after the fact that are coming back and saying we need financial security, and we go in, it's like we haven't finished the swale. So it's one of either we're not asking a lot of these folks or explicitly saying you need to get an inspection to get these done. But this isn't the first time we've had a developer try to get financial security and have a list of stuff that needs to be on. The difference is this one seems to be underground. It's already covered up.
Well, and I think the other layer of this, Ethan, that I'm trying to get to is this is 2005. So I'm looking for clarity. In 2005, were we saying to the building community, this is on your plan, this stormwater management infrastructure is on your plan, and this is going to have to be one of the items that is inspected by the township engineer, like the other infrastructure that you're required based upon the final land development plan that we approved. Was that a requirement?
I do have the land development plan here, and it does list briefly what needs to be done, and it doesn't say anything about an inspection on there. Now jump it back a little bit. This is something we've been working on with the township for years. And begrudgingly, Gerald and I did pay Weber surveyors to go out and look. And obviously, these things are underground now. So the only way you can tell is I call it almost like a candy cane pipe that would come out in the back of the yard. That would be where the rock bit is. But as we're 2022 now, they're a little unsightly. And in 2022, so some houses being built 16, 17 years ago, homeowners have taken it upon themselves to landscape around to the point or just get rid of them.
How much financial security are we talking about?
It's about $250,000 still being held.
And then there's another note here that says the landowner is required to inspect it and forward the report. When is the landowner required to inspect it?
As part of our MS4 program, we send out letters to every BMP that's out there and indicate that the property owner is supposed to do a self-inspection.
And if they don't do that, what happens?
We ask them to do it.
Have these ones sent their self-inspections back?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know that they've been actually inspected in the first place to provide the first letter saying you need a clean out, you need to find the clean out in the first place, or you need to clean the facility.
So I need clarity. I haven't had clarity yet. In 2005, was the
Let's-
building community,
You're saying phase 3 started in 2005?
That's when the plan is. And the houses were built 2006, 2007, up 2008, 9, 10, and 11. I'm not even sure when the last house was built, maybe up to 13 or 14. Township would know that when the last building permit was, or the last CO was given in there. And then that the MS4 permit obviously wasn't even close to existing at that time, at least in the township.
You know,
That was 2004,
what was 2004?
our first MS4 permit.
So in 2004, we got our first permit from the state to manage stormwater. It required BMPs, best management practices. And we started putting those on, requiring them on development plans. And then telling, as Ethan said, telling the development community, hey, here are the things we're gonna require inspection: roads, sidewalks, curbs, rock bins for stormwater management. The developer would have been aware. We gotta call and get these inspected.
Yes,
I sit on the Stormwater Authority and it might be in place from 2004, but it didn't even cross our plate till recently. I just go by, there was nothing that ever asked for an inspection and, obviously, Weber surveyors went out and located these. I think they found them on all lots, but 5 or 6 of them.
I think we have that depiction.
thank you.
Todd. I think you're right, 5 or 6 or so here that don't.
I think one of the issues that probably arose is the fact that the rock bands were required on the subdivision plan, but the rock bands are not put in until each individual home is built. And so I think that's where the ball was dropped, so to speak, in the sense that, yes, it was required on the plan, but when we did the main development, we weren't putting the storm bins in at that point. They were put in at each individual lot sale and when the homes were constructed. And so that's where I think the inspection process fell through at that point.
Just so I can ask a point of clarity, because I think you're actually arguing for my point. You're saying that some of these did actually have it done and were inspected, but these were developed at different times by different developers, and the ball was dropped. You use the word the ball was dropped.
I'm just saying that the ball was dropped in the sense that there was not an inspection process. The plans were approved, the rock bins were shown on the plan. No one denies that. But then the individual rock bins were not constructed until the homes were built. And to the best of our knowledge, they were all constructed, but because of the fact there was no inspection process, there's no way for us to certify that with the township.
So those lots here that don't have the X on them that I'm looking at, I'm assuming that's where the rock bin cap was discovered.
That's correct.
So there are rock bin caps discovered in, the more than half of the lots.
24 lots total, I believe. 6 weren't found.
Okay.
And we're holding $250,000 for the rock bins only, or are there other things the engineer has found? And when is the engineer's last letter?
There's an easement, small easement they want us to change in the back of lots 58 and 59. It's been drawn up. We just need to get the homeowner to sign it.
Okay,
Homeowners, two lots, 50.
I see it down there near the cemetery.
It's that 20-foot stormwater easement
Yep, I see it.
back through there,
Yeah,
just north of that cemetery.
Yeah.
What would it take to go find these things?
Probably a backhoe or a trackhoe.
No. I'm not gonna ask you to go tear these things up, Todd. I mean, isn't there? Can't somebody go out there with a camera and? Now,
Aren't
aren't
sure if there's that technology around or not.
yeah,
Flexible
down,
camera, you stick it down the pipe and see if there's rocks down.
no, that's what they're saying.
You can't
Sticks
find
when they didn't find the pipes.
Yeah.
Well, then you need to find the pipe is the one piece. Where there's no pipe, then someone removed it, it needs to be put back.
well, the roof
Question is
leaders,
whether you go after the landowners to do it or we go after the developer to do it 15 years later.
the roof leaders go into these systems.
Correct, yes.
So if you got into the roof leaders with, every plumber's got a camera that they send down a pipe. Go into the roof leaders, send a camera down and see what you find.
I just feel that's not our responsibility at this time. I mean, I go back to be clear that there was no inspections asked for anywhere on anything of this, whether it be a building permit. I mean, these are definitely, as Jared was saying, whatever excavator did the excavation on the house, and it was mostly, garments. I mean, on the house I built in there, I remember the rock bin going in, but, that's the time when you had a guy doing some diggings, maybe digging the sewer line, digging the water line. That's the time you put the trench in and put into the specs on here. I just maintain that somewhere. That's when inspection should have been asked for, but it just wasn't standard at that time. Rock bins were new everywhere. And, I just feel as a developer that shouldn't fall on us at this point to
Do we
back.
have a record that it was done on all these other ones?
They
We
found,
inspected it?
no, when we said that, we felt that we needed evidence that these were actually
Yeah.
constructed, they sent out Weber surveyors to go find whatever they could find. And
No, he said that they found the whatever it is, the vent pipe or whatever that is. They found them on 8 to 10 of these or something.
They,
As-
they
as
found it
depicted.
on the 24 lots total. They found them on 18 of the
On
lots.
18 of those.
616.
I guess I'm still struggling, guys, with in 2022, we said, hey, we don't have any proof that these were inspected in 2005 through 2011 or something.
Well, the initial step is that developer asks for a reduction in their financial security.
Okay,
That's what triggers
yes.
And then
all
the
of this.
engineer,
And then we say, okay, here's the list of items on your land development plan that was approved. We see you did this, we got roads, you got sewers, you got inlets, you got, curbs, stormwater retention. You guys have the rock bins. I'm saying, where's that shows that a developer came in, they showed us what they did, and we checked it off and we approved it. And we said, engineer says, here's your money.
we have a
don't-
copy of the engineer's letter. Yeah, that's what I asked.
What's that?
Yeah, where's the engineer's letter?
Yeah,
Where's
we
the
don't-
most recent engineer's
I
letter?
don't have it.
Because this is similar, this isn't the first development that, Mill Creek, they came in, it's like, oh, you didn't build a whole. path.
This is one I have, obviously, we use David Miller in this phase, and David Miller can't, I later found this out after wasting probably a year to 2 years, that David Miller can't review this because they did it, so they sent it to Becker Engineering. So there might be just some communication back and forth since, but there was a third item on there, Corey. It was a
Yeah.
fence in the back of 58.
Yeah, I see that 59 or something.
I felt that was between the homeowner and township. They put a fence up on the easement and township agreed to that one.
Roger, Mike, oh, sorry, Ralph. Hold on. Roger, Mike, any questions, thoughts so far? Haven't heard from you guys yet.
Well, my first question was when phase 3 was developed. I think I heard that in the discussion that it started in 2005.
That's correct.
And when was it completed, or is it still in
It-
development?
It's completed other than trying to take care of these issues. I'm not sure, Mike. I'm guessing in the 2014-15 time frame, but that's
Okay.
within a year or so in there.
Okay, and we can verify, and it's 24 total lots,
That's correct.
and 18 of them do have what we're looking for here in the,
I believe all 24 have the rock bins in. There's 6 that are missing or could not be found, whether hid by vegetation or have been knocked off either intentionally or unintentionally by homeowners over you know, anywhere between call it 6, 7 to 17 years.
Okay.
So, go ahead, Roger.
So
Mike.
when a developer sells lots to another builder, all the information is transferred to the new builder.
That's correct, Roger. We, Gerald and as he mentioned, he built 2 houses. In this phase, we built 1, and then we decided to sell the rest of the lots to Gorman Builders. So we gave them all the plans. You know, they went from there, and those plans, you know, they would have been submitted. And I got to imagine on the application for a permit, the township would have required to show where the rock bin is going to be on the lot, as detailed as townships are, even back then. And I did reach out to Gorman Builders to see if they had any info. I've not heard anything back of substance since we had been working with Gorman's builders. The oldest brother, Mike Gorman, and another gentleman had started their own builder or a different company. And so even the guy we would have worked with, Mike, back in the day, he's not even with Gorman Builders anymore. But to answer your question, they would have had all the stuff. And, you know, I built a bunch of houses. Gerald's built more. And when you have part of the building permit is putting on the lot plan, making sure you're within your building envelope, and then showing where the sewer's coming, where the water's coming in. And on these, you know, where the rock bin would have went out. And if not, I feel that then the township should have required that at the time. And without verifying that a rock bin would have been on the property, not issue a CO.
Ralph, go ahead.
We issue certificates of occupancy all the time for things that are incomplete. A lot of times the roads aren't even paved before we issue certificates of occupancy. So that's just.
Am I right, Hutch? One of the final inspections is to go out to make sure the house driveway is in and the grading is done correctly and that a lot is seeded. Wouldn't that have been at a time to just easily look? There's the pipe at the back of the lot and note it. I just keep going back to, you know, here we're looking at it, I think, through 2022 eyes. I'm on the Stormwater Authority. I see how it's changed in the last. It wasn't a Stormwater Authority. We're just a sewer authority. Now we're both. You know, how things have changed here, you know, in the last few years. And I think township and Hutch and Tara are looking at it through 2022 eyes, not what was going on between 2005 and 2012.
Todd, the Becker engineering letter to Tara of June 28th of 2017. Number 2, the plan depicts stone pit easements, excuse me, on lots 53 through 76. But it's not clear if there's any documentation of the stone pits being installed. A signed and sealed letter shall be provided indicating that the stone pits have been installed on lots 53 through and including 76. Was there a signed sealed letter provided?
I don't know who would sign and seal it. You know, different excavators might have done different ones for Garmin's. And again, you're talking that's kind of this letter there, John, is when I started pushing back on that issue.
Yeah, sorry. A process question, and there's a fence in here. We've had this with Mill Creek and other ones.
Yeah.
If there's a development that we're holding financial security for, and there's someone put a shed in it or a place set or a fence in the base, is the developer required to remove that shed, or is the landowner required to move it?
If the basin was never accepted, never inspected and accepted as being complete, that'll show up on the engineer's report to say, hey, there's a shed here, it shouldn't be there.
Just to be clear,
Could you answer the question? Does the developer have to remove that shed to remediate it, or does the landowner have to? Because it sounds like it was on there. They talked with the township and township agreed that the
on that issue.
landowner had to remove the fence. Which one is?
Because in Mill Creek, it was one of, but
mean
we
falls.
still can't release the financial security until it's out of the basin, correct? There's a basin that's got something in it, it's not supposed to be there. Can we release financial security with something in the basin?
We typically will not ask the board to release that security.
And then whose job is it to show us that it's empty?
Again, the financial security is the township's protection that, you know, that facility is actually installed and complete per the
Okay, so
ordinance
that's the answer.
requirements. And
I still don't know the answer to that.
So
I wasn't finished, so,
Okay.
you know, I'm
So,
is the township,
so if you want to finish it, who is responsible for making sure that that basin is cleared?
developer.
But you said that the township said that the landowner could take care of the fence that was in that basin.
I early on in this, I pushed back on the fence and the rock bins and again, we had David Miller draw up the easement that the township wanted changes. The township did agree to pull the fence. I felt that should be between the homeowner and the township if they don't want it there. And they did pull that off of the list. So that's an old list I had.
Okay.
I just thought since someone else had one for you, I'd give you that.
okay,
So we have the ability to just say that piece is not the developers and it's landowners. Because I know in other ones we required, I think it was Mill Creek, we required the developer to send letters to everyone to get everything out of those basins before we could.
Basketball nets.
Yeah.
You're talking about the fall, you're talking
Yeah.
about the falls. The
Yeah,
falls.
you had all of those and people had stuff back there. It's like it had to be cleared out before we could say
Dedicate
that
the road.
dedicate the roads and finish up that piece, that phase. We're still holding financial security because again, they didn't build the plan and there was no inspections along the way that they do that. So it's not the first time we've run into this, but it's one of when we go to specifically a stormwater piece, like a basin that's got something in it. Is it the developer's job to go out and get the homeowners to do the work or do it themselves? Or is it something that we can?
It's always the developer's choice as to when they ask for the release of their financial security. We don't make that choice. So if the developer waits 10 years to ask for their financial security back, we go out and inspect the project to see what's complete, what's in accordance with township ordinance. It's going to show up on the engineer's letter as to it is or it isn't. And so, you know, the financial security is the developers. That makes it the developer's issue to resolve.
okay. So let me try to summarize what I've heard so far. We can keep it going, but let me just summarize here. I think this is yours, Todd.
Next one.
So I hear the developers of this parcel saying that in 2005, when they received approval for the plan, they were aware that there were certain requirements of infrastructure be put in to allow for the homes to be built. And on the plan, and they've actually said that they're recognized on the plan, there were requirements for stormwater management infrastructure, specifically these rock bins. And that they did see at different times as the lots were being developed by different people, they were seeing the rock bins actually going in on at least a parcel or two. And then they did see the vent pipe coming up from the ground at times. The lots were developed by different builders over a period of 6 to 7 years. The property owner, the developer is saying, when this plan was approved, they didn't believe, they didn't see, they hadn't witnessed a requirement to have the township come out and inspect for this specific stormwater infrastructure, this rock bin. They didn't believe the township was supposed to come out. They didn't know the township was going to come out. They didn't see it that way. And they're here petitioning us saying they believe they're there. They're there on 18 other lots. They believe they're there, but they don't have any way at this point of showing the township engineer that they're there. I hear staff saying, well, it was on the plan, and there are things that are on plans that the developer accepts responsibility for and have to get inspected. Township staff listed, infrastructure like roads and curbs and sidewalks and things that do get inspected. I still not sure I've heard that there's a specific checklist that says, and this stormwater rock bin is something that has to get inspected, in 2005. But that is staff's position, is that this is on the plan. All things in the plan have to get inspected. The applicant is here requesting full release of their financial security of about $250,000, believing that this is a requirement that they believe they've met in 18 lots. They believe it's been met in the other 6 or 7 that their inspector says they can't find evidence of physically above ground right now. Staff is saying this was required. Financial security the applicant has now requested full release of financial security. And the township engineer is saying, well, there are these items on these 6 or 7 properties. We don't have any proof that they're there. So they're not there, is what township staff is saying, or township engineer is saying. Township engineer is saying, prove that they're there. I think that's a summary of what
I
I'm
think it's a
hearing.
great summary.
Go ahead.
What is acceptable proof?
Yeah, well, Becker Engineering says in number 2, all they need is a signed and sealed letter from, I'm not sure, but they need a signed and sealed letter saying that they're there.
Is it sealed from an engineer, or is it just in an envelope and sealed? I'm
And
assuming it's from an
that's
engineer.
what they can't get from Garmin.
Well, I guess
For themselves.
whoever whoever did the excavating there, and it could have been 5, I'm not sure. We subcontract stuff out, Jerry.
I think the other issue that in my mind it comes into play is that I don't know that any of there's probably Gorman's actually or yours would have record of anything. That would be the difficulty, because again, there was no certification process required or any inspection process. So there was no reason why an excavator would keep a record that my job was $15,000, but he didn't break it down. He didn't say, well, 5,000 for stormwater retention, whatever. I mean, I don't know that anyone that we've worked with Garmin and Stomps would have that record. So it's going to be impossible again, because we felt the burden of proof is on the township. No one would have kept any records stating whether they did or they didn't. So that's kind of a predicament.
Just real quick, John, on what you had said, we're actually just looking to take these rock bin items off of the list. We still have the easement that has been drawn up. We just need to get
The 20 foot on 58 and 59.
And I guess just from a standpoint, the house we built, the rock bin appears on what Weber did. The 2 that Gerald built, both those rock bins appear there. Is Garmin going to build all these and decide not to do it in 21, to do it in 15, but not do it in 6? So I hear what you're saying earlier about trying to find these now, but being underground, it's not easy, and it's costly. And again, as I started out, I don't feel it's our responsibility.
Yeah. So the question would be what is proof that the rock basins were installed in spec? Like, what would be proof to any builder after they're already covered up? That's a question for staff.
I think there are 2 options that staff has thought of. One would be to open up the roof leaders and run a camera down in there to see if you see the perforated pipe that's supposed to be there. For some distance, you'd be able to tell something from that. The other option is ground penetrating radar to try to locate where these rock bins are. Because right now you can't tell at all.
Not to interrupt, Judge, but I will say, if in the plan here, the existing land development plan does show where the rock bins were supposed to go. And if you correspond this with the ones they found, they're all in the same place. And
That's good.
And so that, you know, so the ones that they couldn't find are on here. So that's
So
a
the other
side of the
question
lot they're
is,
on.
Does the staff accept that the vents indicate that there's a rock?
Yeah, yes,
So the vent being there is sufficient proof.
For
Yeah,
the
18.
18, if they could
18.
find it.
So there's 6 that don't have vent. But
Correct.
you have a plan that shows where the vent should be.
The rock bins should be.
Yeah, the rock bed should be. For the landowner to then do any of the self-inspection reports, it's going to require a vent, correct?
yes.
So either the developer is going to have to put the vent up, or the landowner is going to have to put the vent up. And they're going to get mad at you when, if we approve this and then we come after them and say, you guys put up the vent. Someone's gonna have to put up the vent. So if the board and staff are fine with, you just need to find 6 vents. What would it take to go to that spot and find where the vent hole is, put the vent back? Well, it's one of, the entry of the lot is one of those, and you can look at a vent pipe from off lot. That's another key piece. So I doubt you got permission to go in everyone's backyard to inspect the vents.
Weber surveyor said they were going to send out a letter, and when they went out to look at them, I don't 100% know if that happened, but what Weber's was on the lots. I just look at Ethan. They could be buried over time and this and that. You know, I guess if homeowner takes all their smoke detectors out at some point, am I responsible to go back in after they got the CO and fix them all or replace them?
If you had a plan that said you were gonna put them in, and you were held responsible for making sure they're there to get your money back. Yeah. I mean, that one seems pretty reasonable. This one is just, it's more difficult on this one. If it was, you have to go in and make sure every house has a smoke detector inside to make sure you get your financial reduction, I think you'd have done that.
My point being, if a homeowner changes something after their certificate of occupancy has been issued, then I guess how that falls on us. I mean, I guess if they're out now, yeah, just doesn't seem. It seems if the township would ask for inspections at the time they put them in, you know, then this is a moot issue.
What was the first time you asked for financial reduction? Was it 2017 or was it before that?
I didn't realize I was trying to get David Miller, talking to Charlie Thomas, maybe to get David Miller. You know, we had these streets. Hutch could probably give you David. I know the streets have been turned over and township pavement for 6 years. So soon after that, we realized there's a couple other issues that they want. So I don't have an exact date for you, Corey, nor if I know that was the.
But in that general 15, 16 timeframe.
I'd say maybe 16, 17 at the latest.
Okay, we got to keep going here, guys. Roger, Mike, any last comments for anybody's edification? Anything else you need, questions you have? We need some action. As I'm understanding the question before us, is really, it's not presented this way, but it is, the applicant is asking for release of their financial security once they address the issue of the stormwater easement at the back of 58 and 59. That's all the applicant would like us.
To be honest, I don't know what the applicant's asking for.
It's one answer, yes, but I'm here today to try to alleviate the rock bins from our list of 2 things. that just with the work we've done on it and wherever survey is out, you know,
Okay, so the applicant is asking for removal of the requirement to prove that the stormwater rock bins have been installed on all of the property, all the lots in the development. They're asking for that to be removed as a requirement for them to proceed forward in addressing the last remaining item that would then allow them to come and request release of the financial security. So response.
My preference would be, let's look at a letter, look at a number of what that is. And my preference would be, if there's a letter that says, we've got everything except for these 6 vent pipes, and we're looking for full release, that's a discussion to have. But if it's, I haven't seen anything that says of the $250,000, how much is being held for this one or not. I don't think we've done the calculation. And the other one, is there, right now we're liable if hypothetical flooding event goes in, there's nothing there and it does something bad. And we didn't inspect it, we're liable. Is there a letter that you can sign that says, I verify that these were installed?
yeah, I can come up with something like that.
Well, I think that's what Becker's asking for in that.
Well,
that
he's looking for a
2017.
sealed, so a sealed document is different,
Yeah.
but at least hey, this is the developer of record.
Yep.
You're signing and stating these were put in.
Okay,
I'm open to that, but the other one is the rest of the items on the plan also need to be resolved.
Mike, Roger, did you guys catch that?
Yeah, it sounded like, Ethan, it sounded like you were suggesting, can they give us something that essentially says in all good faith, they've installed the rock bins and they're responsible if for some reason it turns out they're not there.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Correct, Mike. Correct. That's what Ethan is suggesting. And then Ethan is also suggesting, as we all were here, that there's 1 or 2 other items that engineer has pointed out that need to be addressed, and the applicant has recognized those as well too.
Yeah, they're not contending that, right?
They're not contending that.
Right.
No.
But I would like to see a pathway to get those ones resolved. Because it's one of these are connected. We have a stormwater easement that's connecting. It looks like some of these rock basins. And it's one of, if we don't have that easement, I view them as connected because they're connecting rock basins. So it's one of, I don't think we could separate, even if we said, hey, all the rock basins are in. I don't think we should approve any financial security reduction until we can get the easement done. So
I do think with removing the easement, because there's a house in the one corner, there's a house in the one corner, that's why we're moving the easement. Correct.
I'm sorry?
The easement was required because
There's
there's a house on the one lot that ended up being allowed to be constructed in part of the easement. At least the letter I have here from David Miller, that's what they mentioned. Or an email from David.
I haven't seen that.
Okay.
So I don't.
So what I'm hearing is we'd like to have you approach the board again, Todd.
Sure. Yep.
With, a request for release of all financial security.
Okay.
And we've addressed the 20-foot stormwater easement at 58 and 59. We've addressed it this way.
Okay.
I think the one item was removed, which was
Right.
the fence. And then the second is, and we're verifying by this letter that we, the developers, are, testifying or notifying you that, these, whatever lots they are, and I think you're going to have to look at these to see which numbers these lots have stone bin installed. And that would fulfill the township's request that there is, some sort of a, acceptance of responsibility on your behalf.
Sure.
That these were done.
Sounds good.
I think that comes to the township, and you're requesting release of the financial security with those items attached.
Okay.
Is that capturing, Ethan?
and then for staff, it would be, we need to review the current ones. If we're doing an underground installation of a stormwater, we should have a required inspection.
Going forward, I'm hearing Ethan, yeah. I mean, I think staff is saying the infrastructure items on a plan are to be inspected. And I don't think that, stormwater is any different than any of the other requirements for infrastructure. Infrastructure has got to be inspected. Okay, Roger, Mike, are you tracking with where we're going with this? Okay,
Yes.
good. Saw that, Roger. Good. Okay. Okay, no action required at this point.
Thank you,
Give
guys. Thank you,
direction,
gentlemen.
okay? All right, thank you.
Thank
Roger
you.
Coleman. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, guys. All right, thank you, staff. All right. Action items, item number 8A, Whitmer Fire 1994 tanker future disposition value to the township. Ralph.
As a board, will likely recall, the apparatus replacement program anticipated that each piece of apparatus that's on the program would be replaced with new every 20 years. And so when that happens for a piece of apparatus that has been on the plan for that long, depending upon the amount of contribution that the township has made toward that piece, the township retains that amount of value when that piece is sold, traded in, disposed of. And so the case of Whitmer's tanker this year, which was to be refurbished, and the board approved 60% of the refurbishing cost. That issue was then brought back before the Emergency Services Committee to resolve, well, what's the disposition value for the township? And they looked at that and recommended that it be 33% when this refurbished piece is ultimately disposed of. They came to that value based upon the amount that Whitmer paid to purchase the apparatus in 1994, which they paid 100% of, and the amount that the township was contributing toward the refurbishing this year, totaled that up, did the division, and it came out to be 33% for the township. So that's what they recommended to the board, and asking the board to accept or reject or whatever, take some action on that recommendation.
Mhm. Then there's a second issue then, Ralph, which would be, okay, how does that then affect the apparatus replacement plan that we have in place? And give me your thoughts on that.
Right. The plan indicated that this piece was to be replaced in 2024. It obviously was beyond its 20-year original expected life. It was extended based upon input from Whitmer and the ESC, but it was supposed to be replaced with new in 2024. So the question now is, where do we put this refurbished piece on that program for replacement sometime in the future?
Did ESC give you their thoughts on it? Where are they?
It was, I'm going to say, discussed a little bit, but I don't believe it was ever a part of the recommendations that they forwarded to the board.
Okay.
Well, we have a meeting on Thursday. We could bring that up.
I would recommend that, Mike. I'd like to see it go through the ESC. Always value their voice as a collaborative body to help us to develop those plans. So, obviously staff will be at that meeting as well too. So I appreciate that, Mike.
So
Go ahead, Roger.
excuse me, which pieces of fire apparatus would ever come up for possible refurbished? Would it be limited to tankers? I mean, looking downstream, what would be coming up for the next potential refurbished piece of equipment?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ralph's pondering.
Well, there's a big ladder truck come at Lafayette several years.
Yeah, the way the program was structured was it anticipated replacement of each piece at their 20-year life. So it doesn't specifically mention refurbishing in the program. This is the first one that has been presented, requested to do as a refurbishing. There has, in previous years, there was purchase of a used piece of apparatus rather than a new piece of apparatus. So there have been variations within the theme of replacing fire apparatus, but there's nothing specific in the plan that talks about used, new, refurbishing. It anticipates replacement.
I think, Roger, that's a good question for, and maybe Mike can bring it up to the ESC with their expertise. Yeah, maybe they'll know, maybe they can recommend, hey, there are future pieces that could be refurbished instead of replaced. I don't have the expertise to say what they are, but I think it's a good question. And Mike, maybe you could bring it up for discussion, or, do they see this as a possible option going forward for other pieces?
Well, it's definitely come up in the other meeting, and that's what's caused all this controversy, because it's sort of changing the whole system we have right now that's pretty cut and dry every 20 years. But hey, wait, what if we can get a better deal before that? We refurbish it. Would you help us with that payment? And now, where do we put that unit on the replacement plan? And some people have even said, well, geez, maybe we should change the whole replacement plan, that sort of thing. So what I'm saying is it has been discussed, it hasn't been resolved, but the resolution was the Whitmer tanker. We agreed to do that work, and maybe more work has to just be done on, okay, if we're going to add this refurbishment piece, how does that fit into the plan?
Okay.
Did I get that right, Ralph?
Yes.
Okay.
That's good. Okay, Roger.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, thanks.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, Mike, for pushing that conversation. Okay, so we probably should by vote approve the Emergency Services Committee's recommended township, I guess, the value of 33%, and then the cost of the refurbishment, which is the 60/40. So we should have a vote on that.
So moved.
Like that. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Mike. I'll give the second to Ethan. Roger. Questions or concerns? Okay, hearing none. Roger.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Ethan.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Chair says aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Steph. Okay, 8B. We have a neighboring fire company that the township and the fire company are not seeing eye to eye on some things. In my sit down on Sunday afternoon reviewing all this stuff, I thought, I don't know if I have clarity as to why Paradise Township and Paradise Fire Company have reached the situation that they have. Because the request before us is, can we work with Paradise Fire Company for special water rescue events only? And Paradise Fire Company went out and got their own workers' comp. So the township has said, we're not providing workers' comp for Paradise Fire Company.
Correct.
And as I'm understanding it, and looks like maybe Mike signed off, that we're getting some calls to go into Paradise that we weren't at one point, because Paradise Fire Company can't do those calls or something. I guess I need a little bit of an explanation on that to have this discussion. Are we being asked to service area that Paradise was at one time, but they can't service it anymore?
Not as a first due, but for assistance, the fire companies that are now first due in Paradise Township in areas where Paradise Fire Company used to be first due, were being asked more frequently to assist in those areas.
What has occurred with Paradise Township and Paradise Fire Company?
That's beyond my ability to report on.
Mike, anything to add here?
I'm not an expert on it either, but certainly there was some issues with the township and providing insurance for their fire company members. And it appears that they've come up with a solution where the fire companies is able to find its own insurance rather than dovetail on the townships. But from what I understand, again, not an expert, our fire companies are constantly helping each other whenever they can. We do have some unusual, not unusual, but just the way our townships lay out, and our fire companies can be accessible to each other. That's why this issue is still there, I believe. I think it's still an issue for the chiefs to see if it is possible, especially in a time when there's volunteers. Volunteers are at a critical number when we have them. So if somebody can help, we use them.
Okay. I mean, if our chiefs are and the ESC is supportive of it, I don't have any problem. Ethan, Corey.
No, that's why we asked the chiefs to discuss it. Sounds like
Good.
they've discussed it. And
Okay.
the recommendation is for, to use Paradise Fire for special purposes. So.
Okay.
I mean, the main one is, as long as they have the insurance certificate naming us as an additional.
Right.
Then, really, it's more of, our normal policy is if you're working with another township, we accept their sort of, you're covered. So outside of that, they need to name us as additional. If they do that, to me, then it's up to the fire chief discretion to use them however they see fit.
Okay.
I don't see the need to put a restriction of just when there's a need going out and saying this is a resource. If they want to use it for water rescue, call them if you need them. But if something else comes up and you need them, they're a resource.
Good.
We've got the insurance to make sure we're covered.
Good.
Fire chiefs can make that call.
I don't know that we need a motion then. I don't know. We need. Basically, it's pursuing existing behavior. They would have already been doing this anyway.
Oh, I thought there was some discussion that we stopped using Paradise, right?
Right.
I don't
There,
remember.
But in,
no,
When they weren't covered.
Right.
just when they weren't covered.
the township was not named as an additional insured.
Okay,
on
there
the
you go.
policy.
There you go. There you go.
And so,
Come on, yeah. Okay. State your name if you would, please. And you now have us listed as an insured on your insurance. Okay.
Hey, John, that's not coming through. We can't hear
Oh,
that.
so you know what, Justin said? Did you get that, Mike?
No.
We asked if the Paradise Fire Company now has insurance that lists East Lampeter Township, and the gentleman Justin said yes, it is.
Okay.
We're listed. Okay.
We're not sure if that microphone's on.
I think it's on now.
There you go. Yep.
Great. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it. Thank you.
If there's any other questions for me about what's going on with Paradise Township?
We're good. I think we just got confirmation. We're listed as insured. So
Thank you very much.
I believe the township should take an action to accept them as an insured company that can run polls in its township. This is outside of our normal process. So if we want them to be running polls in our township, we're saying you should need to name us as an additional insured. I think we should take action to do that. My perspective.
it is having another fire company list us as an insured. Is that unusual for us?
yes,
Okay. All right. Good. Ethan?
Would that
sorry.
question I have a question. Would it, to your point, Ethan, would that come at the specific request of one of our fire companies, whoever is in charge, the chief or so forth? Again, the kind of going into how the calls come in and how fire companies are in a progression listed for a particular issue. I am not sure how that works. I don't know, Ralph, if you can shed light on how that works. Or the gentleman from the fire company.
No, that's okay. I'll try. The fire chiefs set up their call boxes in the way that they want to see a response to different types of calls and different locations of calls.
And then
Does that answer your question?
Well,
The township is-
it sounds like they have a response. Then the chief is the one that would make the decision as to whether we needed to call Paradise, or it's prearranged then maybe.
Yeah, it's predetermined.
Okay.
For most situations, there can be situations where if they need other resources that, you know, they can ask county to dispatch somebody else to provide assistance.
Okay.
Got it, Mike?
Yeah,
Okay.
Ethan, would that, if you made a motion with that, Ethan, would that be, you know, pursuant to the existing
I would,
call arrangement?
Ralph,
So that,
Ralph,
that, to answer Mike's question, if I were to make a motion, that's where I would lean, is saying our normal way of doing business is if you're working with another township, you're automatically a resource that our chiefs can add to their box. This is outside of the normal practice. So if we're saying Paradise is a resource that the chief can add to their box, that would be the action we're taking, which is one of, and that's mainly from an insurance and liability standpoint. That's what we're trying to get covered here. We do have the jurisdiction to change the primary call, it's my understanding, but this is not what we're talking about here. So anything above, here's the first due map, is my understanding is currently at the discretion of the fire chief. And that can change, and we don't keep track of that. The county 911 does, and they can change that 3 times a day without ever telling us.
Ralph, thoughts?
we had a very good discussion with the fire chiefs, Tara and I, about the issue before you now. I believe the conclusion of that discussion was based upon a very fundamental, sound judgment of the 4 fire chiefs in this township, and I would recommend that you follow their recommendation.
And the recommendation that the fire chiefs are putting before us is that they'd like to be able to call upon Paradise Fire Company for water rescue resources if needed.
Correct.
And my perspective of that is that goes sort of outside of the, I don't see our justification or ability to make that decision.
I don't think we need to do anything, in all honesty, guys. Nothing has changed here. All we have is we got a fire company that lists us now as an insured. And if the fire chiefs want to use them in the means that they would like to use them, they're doing that now. They've been doing that.
The agenda
There's
says
a difference. And
yeah, so if there's a specific wording of a motion
So
that you.
if there's
you'd like,
specific
Mike,
wording,
probably
if,
remove that.
if we need to word it this way, then you need to tell us. Is that the direction that the chiefs gave you? They would like us to take a motion to permit the fire chiefs to call upon Paradise for water rescue needs if needed.
yes,
All right. So somebody gonna make the motion or should I make the motion?
Well, the question is, and this is where I want some clarification. Ralph's memo states, I have no objection allowing the fire chiefs to call upon Paradise Fire Company water rescue resources if needed.
Ralph is saying,
There's nothing in here that says that we should take action to restate that. And if there is, what I'd like to see is what's the justification in the second class township code or how fire companies are operated to say we have that authority. We could pass an ordinance saying the township has to sign off on all boxes and what resources are allowed. But there's large fire events where people are coming from out of the county, or even it's whoever can get here to help us, we're calling. So it's one of what's the justification we have for restricting access. I'd love some feedback from the chiefs.
Dave. Steve, sorry. Well, there's a lot older than Dave
Hello,
and Bud.
Steve Gribble, Chief Bronx Fire Company. I think the first thing that comes to the surface here is, do we have the proper workers' comp with the township listed? I don't know if we had that originally, and I'm kind of,
The last certificate that I saw didn't have that, but we would get that before.
okay, so we still are to the point we don't have the proper insurance. Is that until we have that?
I don't have a certificate that says
Okay.
East Lampeter is.
I mean, when we met as the four chiefs of the township with Hutch and with Tara, I think probably back in the fall is when we were requested to start to take Paradise off the boxes, give or take. Okay. I'm the one that came up with the question as far as my biggest concern was the water rescue, because we do not have a boat in our township. And the next closest boats would have come from New Holland, Ephrata, Conestoga, Rollinsville. Okay. My concern was I'm not going to put our people into a situation where we cannot handle it, that I get my firemen in a problem and we can't provide a service to get these people out if necessary. Now, does this happen often? It does not. But it has happened outside of East Lampeter Township. And at that time, it was okayed that if you are doing this outside of East Lampeter Township and you're in another township, which we do have 3 companies that handle outside of East Lampeter Township, that they could be used. Okay. I'm next to Paradise as far as running calls with them. We only run calls in East Lampeter Township. We do not cover anything outside of that. Okay. The question did come up was, do I have the proper resources coming if Paradise is not on those calls? My answer was yes. We've made adjustments to our boxes. We've moved other people around. We're volunteer. You never know who's going to be there, how many are going to be there. And you hope for the best, and we do the best job we can. I think right now and it's tough when you don't have firemen, you don't have enough people, and volunteerism has been dropping off. I'll say this is when you have a company next to me that has, I'm going to say 20 to 25 active firefighters, it's nice to know that they're there. It's nice to know that, if I need them, and it's down in the, what I call it, the Sattersburg and Paradise areas where they would be on first alarm with me. Again, I'm not trying to go against any of the wishes that the township has. We, as a fire company, have worked with Paradise to give them some financial suggestions. We were asked to go down. We are not getting in the middle of anything as far as the mergers that you've probably heard about. Runx has stayed neutral. We have our thoughts, but that's our thoughts. And I just want to make sure that, if we have a water problem, that was our first priority, to make sure that we have the proper insurance. There's ways we can get around that. And I asked some of those questions, and I was pushing it to a point, but that's why the water rescue came up here today or tonight. As far as the other firefighting capabilities they have, they run a rescue, they run a pump. I do have them coming from other areas right now, since they've not been on our boxes. But I just wanted to clarify where we were at. Hutch is correct in stating that our main concern was the water rescue. Other than that, it's any requirements that township supervisors request and how they want to operate this.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate it, Steve. Okay. So we have the fire chiefs making a specific ask that Paradise be allowed to provide some resources when there's a water rescue need. I'm hearing that it's not anything different than what we do, but we needed to have them as a specific, call us out specifically on their insurance to cover us, I guess, in instance that we would need this resource. And I think Ralph said he would ensure that would happen as well too. So, I need some direction. Staff needs some direction. What are we asking staff to do, and what are we setting the expectation up with the fire chiefs in their interactions with Paradise Fire Company when it comes to water rescue resources?
My question is, do we have the jurisdiction to say you cannot run any other call in this township except for a water rescue? And that's a question which I don't have the answer to, because I haven't seen that. That's functionally what we're saying. Or I could say, as a matter of general policy, you either have to have a certificate of insurance naming the township or working under the insurance of your home municipality as a requirement to operate in East Lampeter based off of how the local chiefs set up their boxes and decide what resources to call. So as I see us as, you're either allowed to operate in the township or you're not. If we want to go down the route of saying we're going to regulate who can operate which ways, what type of training there is required to verify that, there's a lot of other governing bodies that can take care of those things. So to me, it's in either one. You're either operating in the township or you're not.
Can you
the default is you're working with a home municipality and you're on their insurance. In this case, they're not. So then we need to have their insurance naming us to operate in our territory. But then it comes in, hey, you're driving to do a water rescue and there's a traffic accident. Oh, I can't stop. And like, no, we want you to stop and help the person on the way. It's one of, are we trying to do a very narrow thing that could have unintended consequences, or say, look, if the chief at Ronk says, I'm mainly going to call him for water rescue, great. But, maybe 3 years from now, there's another event and you need 3 guys to jump on the truck and drive out for something else. I don't want to have to be the one stopping that from happening.
Sure.
It's
So-
that's where the chiefs have the discretion to choose the resources. We're saying you're allowed to operate in our boundaries, yes or no. Other than that, it's up to the chief.
So is our intention with this discussion to ensure that Paradise Fire Company has insurance and we're named as an insured?
Before we would permit our fire chiefs to call them
Correct.
for water resource rescue.
Correct. That's what I'm hearing. What if our chiefs call them for something else?
Given the circumstances as they are and the discussion of the fire chiefs that we had, their request was that they be allowed to call Paradise for special water rescue events.
And we're saying, as long as they've got us insured, call them for water rescue events. If the fire chiefs say we want to call them for something else, we're still insured. We're still covered. The insurance does not say it's for water rescue events only.
The insurance wouldn't, but what you would be giving direction to our fire chiefs, not Paradise Fire Company.
Oh, no, not even close. No, I don't have any concern what happens with Paradise Fire Company. I don't have any jurisdiction over that. What I'm saying is we've got a neighboring fire company that has provided some sort of, has been engaged with us over the past number of years. Manheim Township is, and Upper Lake Cock is, if there's a need for that. They've got insurance. And we've said to this fire company, you don't have insurance, go get insurance. And then our chiefs can interact with you. Our chiefs only want to work with you on water rescue. That's up to them. Yes, Steve.
The one I'll say here with this. I just totally correct in stating that we asked for the water rescue. Okay. That was our main thing. We do not at this time have the proper paperwork. So it was one of those deals where, look, if I've got to do this, I'm going to do it and ask for forgiveness later. Okay. All we discussed was the water rescue. Now, yeah, when I say this, you know, and Hutch has heard me say this many times, and so has some of the people in the room. I always said, keep politics out of the fire company and keep the fire company out of politics. You can't do that, but you have to have a mutual understanding with everyone on how this works and how that works, and both government and fire companies. Okay. I don't have to preach to the crowd here on this.
You got us.
Our thing is that there's other situations in this that, you know, we have townships that Hutch has to deal with. And, you know, this is quite unique. I'm going to put it that way. It's about the best way I can put it on what's happening. There's a lot of miscommunication. There's a lot of hearsay. There's just a lot of talk that is, some is correct, some is not. And, you know, I think if we took baby steps on this one, we're probably smarter. But this is something down the road that, you know, we didn't want to discuss it with the whole emergency services group, because the chiefs do have the final say as far as who they would like to have run to assist them. Okay. But, you know, when you have Paradise Township right now is not supporting Paradise Lemon Place Fire Company with any money, they're out on their own. And I think it's one of those deals where, to make sure that the insurance is paid up constantly, that maybe there's some requirements to make sure that, you know, are you still covered? Is everything happening? You know, your leadership, is everything in place? It's a tough position to be in.
So do I hear, Steve, am I correct? The fire chiefs are asking us to be very clear about a relationship with Paradise Fire Company for water rescue needs only at this time.
That was our first step that we were trying to go with here.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
How that affects everything else,
Okay. That's great.
you know,
Okay.
I don't want to pull us into things.
Sure. I got it. Okay. We got to keep moving. It's 9:35. I need a motion.
I'll try. I'll make a motion that a motion permitting the 4 East Lampeter Township Fire Companies to call upon Paradise Township Fire Company for water rescue resources and services, provided Paradise Township Fire Company submits proof of proper worker compensation insurance coverage to East Lampeter Township staff prior to any such assistance.
And just to be clear, let's refer to it as Paradise Fire Company. I don't think it's Paradise Township Fire Company, Mike, just for clarity's sake.
Yeah, I was kind of
Okay.
saying that to myself
Good.
as I was reading it.
Good. Yep. No, I got it. Good. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Mike, second by Corey. Sorry, he's a quick draw, Roger. Sorry about that. Okay, questions or concerns?
Just one comment before we call the question, Mr. Chairman. I'm supportive of doing this in concept. I currently don't believe we have the jurisdiction to narrowly make this decision.
Understand. Thank you. Okay, Roger,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ethan,
Nay.
Corey.
Aye.
Chairman says yay. Motion carries. Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate it. 8C, we've got reappointments to the zoning hearing board, alternates, 3-year terms, James Glick and Alex Reedy. Both have agreed to, they're interested in doing this, correct? Good. We've got a third position that's open, so please, members of the board, members of the community, if someone's interested, please forward names to township manager for a 3-year term as an alternate on the zoning hearing board. So James Glick and Alex Reedy. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve reappointments for 3-year terms for zoning hearing board alternates James Glick and Alex Reedy.
Second.
Okay, motion's made by Corey, second by Ethan. Those in favor, Roger,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ethan,
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Chair says aye, motion carries. Thank you. 8D, approval of new treatment providers list for the workers' compensation program. The list is provided.
Yes.
Okay. There are many on there. Okay. We need motion to accept this, correct?
That's what we're asking for.
Yep,
The
okay.
trust that we work with is asking.
Yep. Approval of the new treatment providers list. Is there a motion? So moved. There's a second? There you go, Roger. Ethan, motion, Roger, second. Roger,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ethan,
Aye.
Corey. Yep, and chair says aye, motion carries. Thank you. 8E, 2023 pension plans, minimum municipal obligation calculations.
This is an annual process. The MMO is calculated with the assistance of the actuary by Kevin and provides guidance for the coming year's budget. It is required to be approved in September of each year. And that's kind of how we've gotten into the habit of having Morgan Stanley come in September and have the MMOs on the agenda
Okay.
at the same meeting.
Okay.
So we ask for your approval.
Okay, so the estimated state aid for 2023 is here, 139, 121. And then the obligation by the township is 20,881.
That's for the non-uniform.
And then for the uniform for the police is state aid is 345,404. And the remaining owed by the township is 257,462. And
Right. That information sort of provided as information to the board. The actual MMOs are shown in line 9 of each of those calculations. So those are the amounts that are required to be deposited into the pension plan.
good. So the non-uniformed is $160,002 and the police is $602,866. Okay, thank you. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to accept the calculation of the minimum municipal obligation as presented.
Your second?
Second.
Okay,
Second.
Ethan, motion by Ethan, second by Mike. Questions or concerns? Okay, Roger,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ethan,
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Chair says aye, motion carries. Thank you. Item number 9A is the manager's report and it's all yours, Ralph.
We had one request come in asking if the township would consider funding using ARPA dollars projects from a community organization. In this case, it was the Mennonite Historical Society. Based upon conversations that staff has had with the board since this program became known, it's been my assumption that the board wanted all of the ARPA dollars allocated to the township considered to be lost revenue dollars that would be programmed or funding township projects or purchases and would be allocated as part of the 2023 budget process. So I'd like to communicate that back to this requester to make sure that they know that we received the request, considered it, but the township's not going to set up a program where we take applications from community organizations to distribute through some process the ARPA dollars that have been allocated. So if that is correct, that is the board's wish, I'd ask you to provide that so that staff knows how to respond to this request as well as any others that might come in.
Yeah, we have discussed that. You know, there's a use for those funds to provide dollars that we either shifted around or dollars that we didn't have. I think specifically we're looking at some of that for the apparatus replacement plan as well. So, gentlemen, thoughts?
I think we have a budget process. Any request for funding should come through the budget process.
Yeah, correct. Good. Yep. I think the ARPA dollars remain part of the budget process as we've already directed. So, okay. Thank you. Okay. 9B. Ralph.
This is an issue that has been brought up earlier this year and thought it would be appropriate to have on the agenda to discuss. We looked at what it would take to do an enforcement of the current 30-day limit through the zoning ordinance on hotel stays, and also had the township solicitor provide you with her thoughts on how that enforcement process would look. If this is what the board wants to do in terms of moving forward to enforce that existing limit, I did provide some information on the background related to it, that it's really stems from the building code and the classification of these buildings under the building code, and sort of why there is this 30-day limit in the zoning ordinance. Candidly, it hasn't been enforced because it's not easy to enforce, and we haven't committed resources to doing that. But if enforcing that is something the board wants to do in order to address the concerns that come along with having long-term stays at our hotels, we can do that. I would suggest that we first send letters out to the hotels to remind them of this limit and also of the requirement to maintain a register. I'd also recommend that we send letters out to organizations that we're aware of that have placed people in hotel rooms for longer than 30-day stays and ask them to discontinue that practice. And hope that there would be voluntary compliance in that process. And then again, as the solicitor has suggested, it can be enforced. We would follow her direction on those steps that would be necessary to take enforcement action against the hotel operators for permitting longer than 30-day stays.
How would we begin to closely monitor, Ralph? Are you talking about, you know, staff and I guess police time increased dedicated specifically to this because you do state that, you know, it has been an item that we have not been able to focus on um, as much as perhaps we should, or we'd like to, or need to, because of the resources. So how would you see us dedicating those resources? Where would they come from? What would it look like?
Well, the direction from the solicitor is that, you know, as information would become available through observation or use of the guest register that the hotels are required to maintain, then that would provide us with the information necessary to begin a prosecution. So primarily through, you know, general observation and then access to the guest register.
So would the guest registers, would we even be able to require that, you know, those have to be provided to the township once a year, every 6 months, 30 days? I mean, is there, I think my question comes back to, you know, we this is there, we've had it. I'm not opposed to it at all, but we have it, but we don't really enforce it because we don't have the time or the personnel or the means to do it, or maybe the process to do it. I'm just wondering what that would look like. I know you don't have an answer, and it would have to come, the answer would have to come as we decide we would want to do it. But I do think part of the conversation would have to be is there's going to have to be resources dedicated to do it, to enforce it.
Right, following the direction of the solicitor on
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
that process would be.
Yep. Okay. Thoughts, gentlemen? Response?
Chief Zerby, in terms of safety, Ralph would be in support of this.
He's actually right here, Mike. There's the back of his head.
Okay.
Good evening, Mike.
Sorry.
Good evening, Chief.
It literally is the back of your head. He's looking at.
Chief Zerby, East Lampeter Township Police Department. Yes, I'd be in favor of the township looking into attempting to manage this in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
Chief, could that also be a role for our I'm sorry, I'm forgetting their
Yes.
title, but the administrative assistants that we have?
You're talking about the civilians or the
Yes.
civilian service aides.
Yeah,
It could be. It could be. I mean, certainly the just the mechanism of checking the hotel and, you know, looking
Right.
for reoccurring names that have lasted out 30 days. I think some of the hurdles you're going to have is, you know, what constitutes a new 30 days. They have a person there for 30 days. They say, okay, you can't spend tonight here, but tomorrow you come back and you're good for another 30 days. That might be something that we end up seeing happen. I don't know.
That's addressed in other statutes.
What's that?
That is addressed in other, you have state statutes that deal with that. And the building code also does. So the normal ways you think you get around it, you can't. I mean, it still requires documentation, which is the time and intensive cases.
The only piece of this puzzle that I'm not 100% on, and Hutch, will you remind me? Did our solicitor weigh in on the actual push come to shove portion of the hotel providing us their list of overnight stays? And am I wrong? Was she saying that she thought we would need a warrant for that to force them to produce it?
Potentially.
Potentially. So that suffice it to say that if that's the case, you could have hoteliers that are going to play hardball and not produce it if a warrant were needed.
Yeah, she does say, solicitor does say, if the operator refuses it, the police would then need to obtain the warrant. So, yeah.
and do we have a association of hotel owners that we can, you know, maybe start this dialogue? To me, it's all safety. It's safety for the hotel tenants. It's safety for the hotel owners. and obviously the community, so that this very unique part of our township, which is very, specific to us and Lincoln Highway, Lancaster, especially, that, we're working together to try and really make it as safe as we can, because that's our job. I know we have groups in our county. We've talked about this that are really trying to help the issue with housing, but the safety issue is one that's right here. And I've heard the stories, and you have too, of what can happen in certain places that when they're not taking into account all that we should, and making sure that these ordinances that we have, they may be very difficult to enforce. I don't disagree with that at all. I could see that, but trying to get them on board to know that we're trying to work together.
Mhm. I think we would definitely be reaching out to them, Mike. I think we need to be letting the hotel owners in our community know that we're looking at these again. We have talked about there's another item on here for nuisance hotels. We've talked about that prior, and trying to bring them on board and get them on board. I think the question of safety is, or the point of safety is definitely front and center, Mike. I think we're all concerned about it. I think as the guests, the hotel owners, the neighbors to the properties, all very much interested in the safety and welfare of the public. So I appreciate that. Chief, there's obviously, items in here that, if we were to adopt something like this, your team would have to be pulled into it to enforce these things. I can, it's all over this. I can see it. But at this point, I'm hearing you say, you believe that we would have to figure it out. We have the personnel to make this happen. We need to develop a process to carry it out.
Right.
Okay. Right. Okay. So any further comments, questions for Ralph, for staff, for Chief Zerby?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ethan.
We also have extended stay hotels allowed up to 180 days, which also uses that R2 building code. What will be the process for a hotel that's currently built under an R1 transfer to an extended stay 180-day hotel?
It'd have to meet the R2 building code.
And what's the difference between R1 and R2 building code?
I'm not versed well enough to give you every difference.
In what you are versed on, does it have to do with building construction safety?
I can't answer that.
It's my understanding of the differences in the building code, which is also why the building code is not typically enforced separately between extended stay hotels and regular hotels. It's mostly because the egress requirements are made, the construction requirements are all there, fire moving through the building requirements are the same. The difference is whether you're allowing more of those other facilities that are associated with extended stays, such as, all right, now you're putting in kitchen facilities, which have a different set of building codes when you put in a kitchen facility. So you can retrofit a regular hotel into an extended stay. You just have to now meet those additional requirements of putting those kitchen facilities in. You can also have extended stay rooms that don't have kitchen facilities, which my understanding is there's really no difference in the building code between those specific rooms in an extended stay hotel and a regular hotel. And again, you could also transform a regular hotel to an extended stay hotel. You could also transform that to permanent housing as well, without a large heavily lift on the building code side. So the building code issue, I don't think is not a safety issue from anything I've read, unless staff can come up with something that states how that's a safety issue. The big one here is when we go into this is, hey, there's the enforcement mechanism with the folks who don't want to follow the law. But the larger impact of doing an intentional enforcement is the line which wasn't brought up, which is in the memo here, which is sending letters to the folks who work with the homeless, who work with the working poor, who work with refugees, and telling them, don't do what you've been doing. which is removing half of the housing stock, the emergency housing stock, or half of the hotel rooms in the county. That's removing a significant portion. So you're then taking the folks who are trying to get help through a local agency, you're kicking all of them out. And what you're left with is all the folks who are trying to avoid playing by the rules. I don't know if that's the route we want to take. The other one is if we actually do enforce some of these, what happens to the people who were living in the hotel? Where do they live now? There is no housing. This is why when I brought up the 3 possible routes we could take at the August 1st meeting, one was we could ignore the problem and let the emergency responders deal with it. Second is we can do an enforcement mechanism, kick the folks out. And again, that puts them on the street. And guess what? That goes back to our EMS, our fire, and our police to deal with those folks.
Or the county to deal with it by creating emergency shelter housing. Which is
And
really the solution.
So we can either kick it to our neighbors to solve the problem, kick it to the emergency responders to deal with the problem, or we could look at the third option. And that's where I would encourage gentlemen to review your comments at that meeting and let me know what has changed since then. Because I know, John, you specifically stated, I would certainly not want to, nor would the community want us to kick these people out onto the street.
Sure. I don't need to review my comments, Ethan. I think this is all a comprehensive approach. I don't think we can do one thing. We have to do things. All of this has to happen in tandem. And we currently have hotels that need to clean up their act. We certainly need to ensure that our emergency responders have support to do their job. And we also need to place pressure upon the region, because we can't solve it as East Lampeter Township. We need to put pressure upon the region, bring in the county, bring in Housing and Development Authority, bring in the coalition to end homelessness, and come up with ways in which we can all work together to try to move that forward. I think today we've got a need to address one part of this issue, and is how do we raise the bar for the hotels that are not living up to the standards that we have as for our community. I don't think anyone here is saying, I've never heard anyone say, we want to kick people out in the street. We don't want to look for solutions to provide housing. But I think what we're saying is it has to happen in a collaborative, unified, multifaceted way to solve these issues.
And I'd love to see what such a plan would look like.
Well,
right now, what's before us is enforcing a 30-day stay ordinance.
We'll come up with the plan.
Yeah,
I that is
would
what
like
this
to see
is.
some movement towards that, as opposed to starting with just direct enforcement of this.
Ethan, we have to entrust that staff is taking direction from us and putting in place a process to ensure that this is addressed. The type of plan that you're asking for has to start with staff presenting us with methods and suggested ordinances and suggested enforcement actions. There have to be ways in which we begin the process. If you have a plan, put it in front of us. We'll take a look at what your plan is, put it together, develop the plan, put in place the individuals who are supposed to be serving in the plan, and present it to us. But right now, staff is the individuals who have come forward to say, this is the beginning of a process.
I've attempted to put forward a plan, and it's been, all right, that's not the right process. We need to go to staff to create the plan. Because right now I do not trust staff to come up with a plan to address this problem. Because when I review the memo for the Motel 6 event, they don't believe it's our problem to deal with.
That's not true.
Related to this.
Ethan, that is not true. That is not true. Staff never said that in that report. Staff never said that in that report. Staff clearly outlines in that report what steps were taken and how they responded in relation to our plan, in relation to process and procedure. They didn't respond perhaps in the way in which you interpret an emergency event, or the way in which you believe that event could be defined as an emergency event. They didn't respond that way, but they responded in the way in which they believe the process and the procedures that we have in place called them to respond. So can we get back to this issue of we have hotels in our community that need to be called out for not behaving as hotels. We have a need for trying to raise the bar on the way in which hotel owners, establishments, properties are conducting themselves. We need to reach out to organizations across the entire county of Lancaster and talk to them about the way in which the hotels in East Lampeter Township are being utilized as transitional or affordable housing. We need to determine if we as a community are going to raise the bar on the way in which we enforce or we apply and enforce a property maintenance code. But for you to say that you don't trust our staff to put in place a plan, you're a member of the board, you're an elected representative, put together the plan, present it to this body, and try to win the support of a majority of this board for the approach that you think that is the right way to go on this. The way that we've approached staff at this point is outline what you saw that occurred at the Motel 6. They gave us that report. Every member of the board has seen that report. If there is a response to that report that individual members have, they need to get that feedback back to staff. And staff is now responding to what I've heard from this board over the past 6 weeks is we need to look at our nuisance hotel ordinance. We need to look at panhandling. We need to look at the conditions of some of these hotels and see if there's something we could do to raise the bar and define them as hotels or not hotels. And that's what staff has presented to us. Roger, Mike, you've heard from staff, the potential of
one topic at a time, I think, John. Really, this one is about this particular hotel. I know that it's related, but
correct.
And we had some preliminary discussions. Again, I'm new on the board, and Ethan and I talked a little bit about very briefly about the housing issue. I happen to have connection with organizations in the city that are dealing with housing, and had a very, very informative interview with some folks at Water Street Mission and their perspective on what the issue is. Some of it is timing, COVID, the economy right now. There are a lot of issues, but this particular one, I have to say, and I mentioned this before, these hotels are not made to be transitional or affordable housing. They're not. They're really made for tourists to come to this area. They are used because they're there. And they can be very difficult places to keep safe. We have seen that. And over the years as principal at Conestoga Valley High School, I certainly have heard of the different issues that have happened at hotels and so forth. But for the owners, the occupants, and the community, a very safe and orderly way to structure this unique part of our community, our East Lampeter Township community, is necessary. And something like maintaining a registry is just so basic. It is important that it be done that way. The larger issue of affordable housing in this area and this whole county, very big job. I mean, I look at it as a tremendous undertaking that it seems like there's so many people already involved in a task force and so forth. So if we're talking about a particular plan just for us, that's one thing. I'd certainly join in that, Ethan, and talk to you more about it. But I think we have to do something about the misuse of facilities that are not meant to be any kind of a long-term stay, hotel, living arrangement, aside from those that have made adjustments to their facility so that they can do that. I mean, that's a business owner's decision if they wanted to do that. That's my comment right now, John.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Roger, Points on the hotel stays of longer than 30 days.
Well, I agree with Chief Zerby. The problem's going to come down to the ones that want to blatantly ignore that. They're going to say, well, give me a search warrant to look over my register. So again, it's always it's the hotel owners that we know now that are going to be the challenges, and mailing them letters and things like that probably isn't going to get us farther down the road. But this whole housing, hotel units, motels that aren't made for long-term stays and things like this. I mean, this is a multifaceted challenge, and I'm not sure why East Lampeter Township. We probably have the bulk of motel rooms in our township, so why do we need to carry the brunt of this challenge? But I mean, we do have the tourist business and these less than adequate motels, and county, other townships are seemingly want to use our facilities, and it's not working for the safety of our residents, our owners of our hotels that are pulled into the whole quagmire of the ones that don't want to live up to being good motel owners. So I'm not sure where to go. I did have a discussion with correct me if his name, if I don't have John, is it Jonathan at CVCSS?
Is it John Barrett? John Barrett?
Yeah, John Barrett.
Yeah, there's a member of the public here who's shaking her head. Yes, John Barrett. Yeah.
John Barrett. And he said even on their level, when they're literally the first responders to persons caught in these situations, he said the follow-up mechanism, they try very hard, and these people do not come back for follow-up. And maybe Chief Zerby, I'm sure you've reacted with CVCSS at numerous times, and both our police department and that organization is runs into block walls day after day.
I would agree with that.
Corey.
Yeah, I am concerned with the enforcement of the limit of longer than 30 days. I agree actually with Ethan on, not actually, I agree with Ethan on the unintended consequence of folks that are good people that are going to get put on the street if we were to enforce this even somewhat immediately, right? There is a shortage of places for people to go. So that's point one. Point two, John, I agree with your point that we are trying to clean up the hotels. I feel like some of these other items, like the nuisance hotel ordinance, the IPMC inspections of the hotels, would be other methods to help clean up the hotels as well. I realize they're all interrelated. I realize the housing stock in this area in the county is short at frankly every income level and every price point. But it's definitely an issue at the lower price points. So yeah, so in summary, I would much rather look at C and D on our list before B.
Go ahead, Mike.
If I could just say, I also don't want to give the impression that I don't think everybody's doing this, that like we can lump all hotel owners into one group and say
Agreed.
someone's not doing this or not doing that. I mean, some of these folks are great members of our community doing a great job. And, you know, when they're following the law and they're doing everything they can, and, you know, it's no fault of their own that, you know, we had COVID hit and there was money put out, all kinds of things have happened to landlords and other people during this very difficult time, people displaced, out of jobs, finding ways to give them resources to help pay for roofs and so forth. But we do have to get prepared for a return to somewhat, you know, more, let's say, normal circumstances that are supply and demand and opportunities for people. You know, sympathy for those that are really in a transitional situation with housing, yes, but you know, the idea that you're running a hotel here in our township and you have a business model you're running, and that it is really being disrupted by a situation like this. I think we have to get honest about how it should be run. As you said, Corey, like cleaning up the hotels. You know, I've heard all these stories over the years of this hotel, this kind of activity, that activity. Nobody in the community wants that kind of stuff to happen, nor put people in danger, nor, you know, just the whole reputation of Lincoln Highway, Lancaster. So I just want to make that clear that I don't think anybody is saying, oh, all the hotel owners are in one lump. No, that's not true.
Yes.
Correct.
I agree, Mike. Thank you.
Correct.
Thanks for that clarification.
Correct.
So another two clarifications here. One to Mike's comments. If a hotel wanted to convert into a permanent housing facility, you can do that. It's currently illegal in this township. There are neighboring townships where that has happened. You can go up to Effort and go look at one. There's hotels, and it's not a lot of work to make. They're built to be safe living facilities. Hotels are built for that. They are not inherently unsafe because someone's staying there 30 days and they immediately become unsafe once they go to 31 days. The building code is that there are some, you can easily convert hotels into living facilities. It's done all the time. It's done in this county, it's done across the country. And we've had issues where we have hotels that have had more fire calls, that have more issues with first responders going to them on a regular basis, that have tried to convert their hotel into other uses, but they've run into boundaries because the uses they were looking to change to were illegal in our zoning ordinance. So there are zoning changes we could make that could allow those things to take place. I think the other key point of there are some good operators and some bad operators and everything in between in hotels, which leads us to a potential unfair enforcement response. So if we're just, I mean, we could all, the fire chiefs are here, we could all write a list of hotels on a piece of paper and say, pick the top 5, and I'm pretty sure we're all going to agree about 90%. We all know what the problem hotels are, but if we go out and start pulling their registry books, well, guess what? But we didn't pull it from any of the nice hotels. Now we're unequally enforcing our rules. And so there has to be some equality of how we're enforcing our rules against all of the businesses and all the hotels.
Sure. I don't think I've heard anyone say, hey, let's put in place an ordinance where we unfairly enforce them. I haven't heard that from anybody.
Yeah. So then the final point is, and the big one is both where you're dealing with the Motel 6 after action, or this one is, my goal for East Lancaster is we need to have the posture of we are working with our neighbors to solve a problem, not trying to say you have to solve it, not us. And we're working, we're an equal partner standing up beside the county emergency management, beside the Red Cross, beside the fire companies if there's an emergency event. Whether we disagree whether it's technically an emergency or not, pretty sure all the people in that hotel viewed it as emergency. We're very grateful the Red Cross came out.
Correct. And who wasn't there? Our fire company was there. Multiple of our fire companies were there. Multiple of our fire companies stayed around for hours. Our fire companies reached out to and got a hold of the codes enforcement. Codes enforcement shut the hotel down. The owner had notified all the residents, all the guests on the 5th of July that they were in fact closing the hotel on the 15th of July. And on the 17th of July, the sprinklers went off. And on the 17th of July, I think all four of our fire companies, Dave Keynes, did they all respond? All four fire companies responded. They were there for hours. They got codes enforcement to come out and they closed it down. I don't know what we're looking at as, I haven't talked to any member of the board that's looking to point fingers and say somehow East Lampeter Township needs to have 5 more staff members that can enforce or, provide some sort of different care than our fire companies or the Red Cross or the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. No one has said that. We responded appropriately. And
I've not heard the board say that, but I'm basing it on Ralph's memo, what Ralph said.
You've not heard the
following
board
meeting
say
where
that.
He said, this is,
Okay.
the fire should have gone home. This is not our problem.
Corey, you read the report.
Yes.
Where do you believe that our staff made an incorrect call? And there is something that, because Ethan is clearly holding something very directly that he believes our staff should be accountable for what happened at Motel 6.
Based on the report that I read, I don't, again, this is from staff's point of view. I believe what he wrote is true and correct, and I believe that was a proper response.
Good. Mike, Roger, where you've read Ralph's report, where do you believe that staff incorrectly managed that situation?
Cell phone.
All
Okay.
right, that's a good point.
Yeah, that can happen. I know it can happen because it's happened to me when somebody needs you and they can't get you. And why is it? Because that's one of those situations that might happen occasionally. I mean, that was probably one of the primary ones, but that can be easily corrected. It could happen to anybody. And, that's one thing, because you do want that person to be able to be reached in a moment like that. I don't agree that it would reach the level of an emergency like that. I don't think that's the intent of those kind of plans that we run. But like you said, Ethan, I mean, being a partner and working together, I mean, I think we do that well. And in that situation, kind of a perfect storm, having that particular person on the ground there. Eventually it did come. It wasn't as fast as most people would probably want. We have our volunteers that are out there to fire people. I mean, thank goodness we do. And they're dedicated, and they're out for the safety of others too. I should have mentioned them also in the enforcement of, the way things should be for our hotels too, because they're the ones that get the calls and they're there. But that's the first thing I saw.
Good. And SOP there, Mike, was that they pivoted and got a hold of our third-party code enforcement when they couldn't get a hold of the building codes enforcement officer on staff. Roger, your response there.
Yeah, the cell phone, but I mean, that probably has happened to all of us. So, and it was just what happened after that sort of made that a regrettable error, that that person didn't have the phone on his person. But again, the staff knew what to do the step after, and that was get the third party code enforcement personnel involved.
Right. Good.
And once it goes to that level, I mean, the speed of the response slows down. So that was problematic, but somewhat understandable.
Good. And Mike, the ESC met, I believe, just a couple days after the event at the Motel 6. So what was the ESC's assessment of township staff's response and managing of that situation?
I can't speak to that. I wasn't there, John.
Okay. So Ethan, you were attending in place of Mike, the ESC.
There was no discussion on the agenda for that item. The two questions I would have. One is, has any member of the board reviewed this report from our emergency management folks or this
Yeah,
report
no,
from
hold
the
on.
county?
Hold on. Our emergency management coordinator did not put together a report.
Brett put together this one,
That's Brett's not our emergency management coordinator. Jeff Hatfield is.
the deputy emergency management.
Brett Hatfield, Jeff Hatfield did not put together a
Yeah,
report.
But have any of you seen either of
And,
these? presentations?
Brett has not approached us to give us any evaluation of this.
So the
So do
memo
we-
states that Ralph asked Brett, he didn't ask Jeff, but he asked Brett for any reports or minutes from that. Because then Brett asked me if I had notes. I have notes. I know the chief took
Okay.
extensive notes. I haven't seen the chief's notes. I don't know if anyone else has. Pretty sure Ralph has
So-
those. Brett indicated he sent all of this information to Ralph.
I've not seen a thing, but who authorized to do a download report of it?
Our
Who-
emergency
who-
management coordinator and deputy were on site running a joint command with the fire chiefs, the county, the Red Cross, and they did an after action debrief, which is
Good.
good practice to do.
As they should, as they should. Our emergency management coordinator, the assistant, are both members of Lafayette Fire Company. Lafayette Fire Company responded to this. So Dave Keynes is here. Dave Keynes is the chief of Lafayette Fire Company. Dave, could you please come up and approach the board? I have some questions for you. So Dave,
Chief.
thank you, Dave. Dave, have you been in touch with staff to discuss the incident at Motel 6?
Just briefly today, I spoke with Ralph.
So it's been almost 8 weeks since the incident.
Yes.
So within 24 to 48 hours, did you reach out to Ralph to give Ralph an
No, I was
incident
away on
report?
Business travel, actually.
Okay.
So I had talked to the personnel on the scene via phone twice that evening.
Okay.
Probably mid-incident, at the end of the incident, to get some details.
Good.
Those details, in my opinion, are still being formulated.
Okay, so you responded. Were you the officer on that night?
No, I was away on business travel.
Okay.
I checked in by phone twice.
With
Mid-incident
whom? With whom?
With the duty officer.
So there was a duty officer on
Yeah.
that night. Did that duty officer get to the incident and have access to a third-party building codes inspector? Did they have access to the Red Cross? Did they have access to the resources that their SOP requires of them?
So when the Lafayette Fire Department arrived, they started to control the situation and mitigate it. The police were there, EMS were there. It started to become more of a unified command between the agencies that were present. They pulled in the Red Cross, the county EMA,
Good.
whether the township EMA was there in the capacity of Lafayette or the township, I'm unsure. The deputy EMA was there. I believe he was in the capacity of Lafayette, but he's still the deputy EMA. The county EMA arrived collectively. They attempted to mitigate the situation. But in my best knowledge, I would say they ran out of plans. The only thing we did not-
The county EMA did not have a plan nor an understanding of how to respond to the situation.
Okay. The Red Cross responded with 9 personnel. They carry with them information that leads to housing and shelter. There were special conditions that once they went down through that list, people said no. Because they knew they were getting themselves into. No, that list is an old list. No, we know the clientele that exists. No,
And this was all the Red Cross you're describing to me.
yes.
There's nobody at East Lampeter Township is involved in this. There's not a need. Red Cross is already there on site.
Correct. The only thing that we were missing from the unified command was the authority having jurisdiction, which is East Lampeter Township being present to assist us in making decisions.
And so Lafayette is there. They're being assisted by Lancaster County EMA.
And the police department and the Red Cross,
Mhm.
housing authority,
Good.
the more logistics you pull into this,
Mhm.
and basically we were running out of plans. So what do you do?
So the county's running out of plans, the Red Cross is running out of plans, Lafayette's running out of plans.
In the
Correct.
scope of what the fire does, and the scope of what the police department does, and the scope of what Red Cross does, yes, we were all running out of plans.
So,
Because
But-
they were failing. The plans that were in place were failing.
and so any post event communication with Ralph Hutchinson and his staff from you to them or your duty officer, there's never been no one's made an attempt to get a hold of staff and download from that event.
I will say that our township EMA had gotten a hold of staff, yes. During the incident, same way as I did. via
No,
phone.
correct. You described that at the beginning. I said post event.
Post-event,
Eight,
the,
in 8 weeks, Ethan's referring to 2 reports that someone's
Yes.
put together.
so post-event, I was asked if we could have this was by Mr. Foster, if we could have a critique to be held at the Lafayette Firehouse.
And why did Brett Foss not call that meeting?
He was present on the incident scene. He's deputy EMA of East Lampere Township.
So he's
also-
deputy EMA. So did he get a hold of the Emergency Services Committee? Was any of them, was the
This doesn't
Emergency
have
Services
anything to
Committee?
do with the Emergency Services Committee.
Okay, so therefore, did it have anything to do with the township? Was this a fire company only download?
This was a fire company. He asked me for permission to hold a critique, which I gave him the permission. He invited all parties that were agencies that were available, that were on the scene to appear at that critique.
And the report that Ethan is referring to that was
It a
put together.
bullet point question report that it was a guideline to follow that Brett had drawn up, presented to kind of steer those that attended the critique. And basically it was just, does fire have anything to say? Does police have anything to say? The EMA have anything to say? And so on and so on. All the agencies that were represented basically got to express their opinion about what happened that night and the issues that took place.
And that report has been forwarded to Ralph Hutchinson.
The PowerPoint, yes, that's what I have here. I'm happy.
It's the bullet power, the question, not the meeting notes or anything. I took some personal notes in my own. After that, there was a follow-up at the Lancaster County Emergency Training Center. That was held by the county EMA. And once again, all the same parties were invited. I believe there were even some extras from the Housing Authority that were invited to that. That Teams, it was a Teams meeting, or you could attend in person. I attended approximately 2 hours, and Ralph was in attendance for a portion.
And the intention then is to take all these reports and bring them back to Emergency Services Committee.
Not emergency services. Emergency services doesn't have anything to do with fire protection in the township. Emergency services. is
Hold on.
basically
So
planned-
this was an issue, as you're saying, this was a fire protection issue at that hotel.
No.
Does
This is beyond the scope of a fire protection issue at the hotel.
You just said our ESC doesn't have anything to do with fire protection.
ESC, basically planning and direction for fire services or emergency services within the township. It's not where we discuss how incidents are mitigated.
Does the ESC help to inform the way in which our township developed its emergency response planning?
We approved that, yes, recommended it, the emergency response plan.
Good.
Yes,
So I would expect then, as the chair of the board, that the ESC would look at these reports that Ethan is saying members of our emergency management team, Brett Fosnot and Jeff Hatfield, have put together. And I would expect the ESC would review those to see, is there anything here that took place that affects our emergency response planning? And what those would be, and any changes or edits that they would recommend that would come back to the board.
I don't think we're in a position to make any decisions right now about how to move forward yet, because we are still gathering information on this one of a kind incident for today. I think there's a potential for it to happen again in the future, but I don't think we're in a position to adopt an ordinance at this time. There
Right.
will be an after action report that will be coming out from the county. I'm not sure when. I'm going to estimate 2 weeks from now. We need to, in my opinion, digest all of this. It's going to take time. We don't want to do a knee-jerk reaction.
Good.
We do not, this is my opinion.
Your opinion is my opinion. I believe wholeheartedly in what you just said, Dave. I
hear what
think,
everyone is
I think
saying.
it ought to go through our emergency services committee and it ought to take as much time as they need to review it. And I think staff ought to sit and participate in this and be part of that discussion. And I think our emergency management coordinator, Jeff Hatfield, should participate in that same conversation. I think conversations like that should take place in a collaborative body with all the parties in the room who can participate in trying to come to a better understanding of what we have in place, what situation transpired there, and what we might want to change or keep in place. I don't think anything ought to happen fast. I don't think anything ought to be rushed. And I certainly don't think anything should happen in one group of people or one fire company or 2 individuals who you know,
I think we're
have a
on that
role.
path.
No one should do that. It should be done collaboratively.
The after action critique that took place at Lockheed, yes, I authorized that. It gave the okay to them to occur. The after action critique that took place at the county training center, that was not my doing, but I was invited. And I did participate with them. And we are still digesting the information and the learnings from that day.
Take your time. Take your time.
Well, you are included as the
and-
authority having jurisdiction.
Take your time and do it well and invite them, cast the net to the group of people that are all participating in this, who should have their voices there. And then we can look at, you know, what does the ESC think is our community's appropriate way of managing those kinds of situations going forward.
Heard a lot of wanting to put blame somewhere for not making the right call. Or wanting to suddenly state an ordinance, a nuisance ordinance. I'm not against the nuisance ordinance if we do it right. There are other, we are being the model for the rest of the county.
Agree.
It's unfortunate that this occurred in East Peter Township. We are the guinea pig, but we are now the model. And we need to get this out. Our decisions will be great in how these type of things are handled in the future.
Correct. And as a board, you can see that there's about 6 items here we've asked for discussion on these items. There's not an ordinance adopting here. There's not, we're not voting to approve. These are all discussion issues because over the past 2 years, in particular for the Motel 6, it goes back multiple years, we've been dealing with some of these issues. And staff has said, you know, we want the board to have discussion on these things. We need to hear from the community on these things. We need to have the ESC review things that they do and the way in which they behave and speak into our emergency response plan. And when you have the voices at the table,
Yes.
having a
Understand the logistics that it takes to enforce some of the items that we are discussing are greater than what we can achieve. Right now.
correct. And that's why we put discussion on here. We're looking for that kind of input. Chief just gave his and some of us are responding to even some of the chief is saying that looks like a difficult thing. How do we do that? And that's the discussion we're having. When we were trying to put in place 5-6 years ago, a ordinance to how to deal with nuisance properties, we invited the community and we had standing room only. 2 different meetings. And we decided we were going to put in place a property maintenance code that was going to be complaint based only. Because the community said to us, we do not want you coming inspecting our properties. And so that's part of this discussion. What does that look like if we took that further?
My last words are that the information is still flowing and not to get to a conclusion just yet.
Couldn't agree more, Dave. Thank you for that comment. Appreciate that. Gentlemen, it's 10:35. We're not going to get through all these discussion points. Your thoughts, your interests.
I just have one question that I'd like to clarify, and this I think runs it. This is the issue that gives me the most frustration right now. Based off of my read of Ralph's memo and the conversations immediately following our August 1st meeting behind closed doors, not in the public meeting. Ralph saying, once the codes officials shut down the hotel, we're done. Fire companies should have gone home. It's not our problem. That's my read of the memo, as well as a similar vein, as well as the other memos he's requested from the solicitor is, once we've shut that building down, we are no longer, it's not our problem. He says, good that there's some compassionate people who wanted to step up. But is it the position of staff that the fire companies and these folks should have, once that building is closed, gone home and let the property owner be responsible for taking care of things?
The property owner was responsible for that event and continues to be the responsible party for that event.
What has that led to? I mean, what's the enforcement mechanism to get the property owner to do their job? That's the role of government, is to step in when the private property owner does a bad job and there's 100 people out on the street. That's fundamental, whether we call it an emergency or not. It's one of, we're elected to take care of our neighbors who are going through an emergency and a crisis when we're there. And I believe that all of the agencies that showed up and were present did a fantastic job. My concern is that the attitude of staff seems to be that they should have not done as much as they did. And once the building was shut down, you leave it up to the property owner, even if the property owner doesn't do their job.
Whoa.
Share with you.
Speak directly into that because they won't be able to hear it.
Some of
Sorry.
the reason the fire company had stayed on site, from what I was told, was that they needed to escort. The building was dark. The people wanted to go and get their belongings, whether it be animals or other substances or clothing, whatever. The building was dark. They needed to be escorted in and out of the building. Some of them didn't want to wait for an escort and were actually jumping in and out of the windows when they're in. That involved the police department. I don't want to speak for Chief Zerby, but there were some other incidents that occurred that evening which tied the police department up. Once again, started out as a fire call. Lafayette had control, merged to a unified command system. All these different agencies, you just don't walk away from the unified command. That is not how National Incident Management System is set up. You don't just have a body that walks away from that command. You're all there working collaboratively.
And so who was leading that?
There is no leader when there's a unified command.
So where was the county emergency management in this situation?
They are part of that unified command. You have all the agencies who become part of the unified command. No one is in charge. You each have your own scope that you understand.
Thank you.
So while the police department was tied up in the issues of people jumping in and out of the building, an arrest was made, I believe. There was also a fight going on. Can I elaborate more? Fire police, when we're on an incident,
actually are tasked with the safety and security. So they were actually blocking the exits and entrances, not allowing people in and out of the building and escorted. So we could have just left. But that's not how NIMBY is set up.
Steve. You were stepping up.
I was only going to reiterate what Ralph brought up, that was it doesn't help the situation, but the one thing that isn't being held accountable here is, if any of you gentlemen were on vacation with your family and this happened to your hotel, your expectation would be that hotelier would find you another room and comp it for you.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
what's supposed to happen. Right? I mean,
Absolutely.
it's-
Absolutely. Wait, when the code enforcement person showed up and said, this is uninhabitable for human, habitation, the owner was there. The property owner was there.
Yes,
Property owner was aware that this had just occurred.
yes. That didn't happen, but some of the other things on the table here, like the hotel nuisance ordinance, it does take progressive steps. It doesn't address everything, and maybe it's not perfect, and maybe it needs to be looked at a little bit more, but some of these hotels are quickly turning into what Walmart was for us 15 years ago. And if we continue to respond to the same hotel 3 times in one shift, well, that's a bunch of other residents in East Lampeter and Upper Lake Township that aren't getting services from us or are getting them slower. And that's a problem. I mean, we just can't keep having the same hotels or another hotel fall to the point where it's drawing on our resource like this. And we had to take that up with Walmart at the time. There's got to be, we have to keep, the ball rolling in such a direction that we're building up to not doing things unequally. We don't want to do that, but addressing our problem children, so to speak.
Absolutely. So you're describing one of many actions we need to take as a community to address these issues.
Right.
And that's what this board is interested in doing, is taking it slow and not running out there and accusing people and pointing fingers and, throwing people under the bus, and make sure we have a very clear understanding of the multifaceted things that are driving these issues. If I could come here next week and approve an ordinance, and there'd be a plan in place that we could turn one of our hotels into a very unique housing option for individuals who are looking for that kind of housing, it'd be wonderful. It would speak to my heart. But I also know that there's building codes issues, there's safety issues, there's neighbors that are associated with, there's parking issues, there's issues of affordability, there's issues of access to all kinds of services. But this isn't something that I'm sitting here saying we're going to solve this quickly. And I don't think anybody should believe that that's the case. But we have to have these discussions. We have to look at all of the tools in the toolbox to try to address these issues. We have a member of the public that's been sitting back there very patiently for 3 hours, 4 hours. Would you like to come up and speak to the board? Yeah, please do. Because it's 11:15 and we're going to have to end this. So.
My name is Susan Orth, and I'm the treasurer for the Conestoga Valley Ministerium. I chair the CV Homes of Hope, which transitions homeless families into self-sufficiency. And I'm also on a new committee called SEEDS, which is looking at affordable housing. And today I was at a meeting, and Sally Bredeman, who was the principal at Smoketown, said she knew I was coming to this meeting tonight. There are 10 to 15 families living in hotels at any given time. And when we all of a sudden start to enforce something that in 30 days are going to be kicked out, it's unsafe in the hotels, but it's also unsafe on the streets and in a car. So it's kind of like weighing which is going to be better. And it's a very multifaceted problem. I would be glad to work with you on a plan, because I think the first thing is this committee has to make some zoning changes. so that we can actually make some of these hotels into affordable units. CV has the second highest homeless rate of kids in the county. We're right after the city. Right now, 139 kids have been identified as homeless. And Water Street right now at the moment does not have family units. And if you're a mom, you can only take 3 of your kids in. You have to give the rest of them up. And if you're a single dad with custody, there is no place for you to go. So you're stuck. So I'm just kind of speaking from a humanitarian issue to not enforce like a 30-day thing right away, because I don't think that would be a good solution for our families.
None of us do either. So,
So I just wanted to.
and I will tell you, Mrs. Worth, if I can. So Roger and I've been having quite a bit of conversations, and Roger has said, John, in this whole issue, there's a place for our faith communities, and we've got to tap into them. Roger, in fact, said he was talking to John, I guess, Bateman, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
And Roger said, I want to be part of that kind of conversation, So I think one of the concerns that we have, I think it's on Ethan's heart, is that we look after the people, okay? And we look after our neighbors. Once again, there's nobody here that's disinterested in that. Our staff pursues things in a way that is intentional and methodical and prudent, that ensures that are we dotting the i's and crossing the t's, and that can frustrate some people. In the end, it's designed to, in essence, protect people. So yes, we're concerned about putting people on the street. There's no one here that's saying let's just pass this ordinance tonight. I've never seen an ordinance get passed that fast anyway. So Mrs. Worth, please, stay engaged with us. Roger's interested, Ethan's interested,
I will do that. I'm going to take information back to
Great.
Seed and the ministerium. So
Great.
I'm trying to keep them.
Great, man. You line up every house of worship in this township, and we will set you loose. So, okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Good seeing
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we really have to end. It's now 10 of 11. Mike, you're smiling because you're on vacation somewhere. So,
Well, sort of.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're working tomorrow anyway. So, I've asked Mike, said something to Ralph as well too. The ESC has to play a role in all of this, Dave. It is talk about being a model. East Lampeter Township has a model. It is all 4 of our fire companies work very closely together with staff to ensure that your voice, your experiences, your skills are part of anything we do. We have an emergency response plan. If you guys think it needs to be tweaked and edited, you need to bring that forward to us, and staff will help us to understand what you're all looking for. But we need the ESC to be involved in this. To point fingers and chatter, I'm not saying you are. I'm saying that this happens though. To point fingers and say, so and so is not doing this. So and so. Show me the whole story. Show me the whole picture, and then I'll make an evaluation myself if someone is or is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Because I think oftentimes the picture is really only about a half a picture. And right now, we've got a community that is saying to us, there's problem hotels in Lincoln Highway. There are folks who are living in hotels that need housing, and these buildings are not meant for them. They keep getting thrown out on the street because smoke detectors don't work, and extension cords are plugged into extension cords or plugged into microwaves in the hallway. And fire company, you and I, how many times we talk about, every night, John, we're responding to this thing 4 or 5 years ago. Now I'm closing the hotel on July 15th. I'm sending a letter to all the occupants, closing this hotel. Sorry, July 15th, it's closed. July 15th comes and goes. The guy doesn't close the hotel. And on the 17th, we're stuck with 100 people out in the street. So, we've got to gain a full and complete picture of these situations and who's making what decisions and who's responsible, who's accountable, who's got the authority. I'm hearing things I don't like to hear. There's a chain of command. And in the end, that chain of command has to stick. You just said it to me. If not, things are going like this. And I'm concerned that there's chain of command that is breaking down. So I need to end, guys, okay? I'm recommending that we table and we continue these discussions.
If I could just get an answer to my one question, I would appreciate it. Because and this is the one of, I would love to leave this meeting with some sort of unified or direction from the board that says, that acknowledges that this was a big event, that folks responded as they should. And we should be looking for ways to fix that and work together to find better solutions. But the line in Ralph's memo and his statements outside of meetings is there was no obligation for further assistance. I'm of the opinion that based off of what the folks on the scene said, there was an obligation for further assistance for these folks. And if we are at a disconnect between our emergency response community that clearly on the scene said there is an obligation for further assistance and they stayed there, and staff's view is there was no obligation for further assistance, then we're going to be working like this. We need to be working towards the same one of either, yes, there's an obligation for assistance. We need to work on better ways to have plans and work together to find solutions. We're not going to be the whole solution, but we need to play a part in it. But if we have the viewpoint that there's no obligation for further assistance when there's an event like this, then we can pass a couple enforcement pieces and push it down. But that's the clarification that I think would
Well,
benefit.
what is the question again, Ethan? What is the question?
Does staff believe that once code shut down that hotel, there was no obligation to offer further assistance, which is the statement here, which goes back to the comment that Ralph had made after the previous meeting of once that building was closed, fire company should have handed the keys back and gone home. It's not our problem.
I think the
That's my
question,
concern.
yeah, you're asking about responsibility. I know that there's the obviously human component. I only think you can get that if we have a full understanding of all this information that's been around. I mean, tonight we heard about these different meetings that have come to be that we're studying this whole thing and bringing it together. I mean, let's make sure we understand completely where we're at and go from there. I'm for one am very interested in getting that information. So as you said, John, we can discuss it at ESC. I don't want to say ESC is the end all, but we have emergency coordinators, you know, what kind of an event it was and so forth. I appreciate what Ralph gave us. And I don't know that we can answer that without everything together. That's my statement on it. I'm perfectly willing to work to get that information in a most concise way as we can. And I'm respecting that people have already talked about it. I know I haven't been at those meetings, but if we're going to bring it up at the ESC meeting, we're going to have to bring that information in and really analyze it carefully.
Thank you, Mike.
That's my opinion.
Thank you. To you, 5 of 11. You want to keep it going? Keep going.
Well, it's your meeting, but I'm happy to attempt to answer Ethan's question. I stand by the memo that I prepared. It may not have been as artfully written as some others have capabilities to write, but I wrote it to the best of my ability. You know, in hearing you read it back, and I believe what you just read is accurate from the reading of my memo. Perhaps I should have said legal obligation rather than just obligation, but I stand by the memo and what I prepared for the board.
Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. We got to end. Roger, Mike, Ethan, Corey, we got to end, guys.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, good.
Second.
Motion by Ethan, second by Corey. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Aye. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank